I'm going to be a little more forward, a little harder edge than I've been. I've got to be careful about how I phrase things and how I do things. And I want to emphasize above all else, these are my opinions, and it's up to each of you to make your own opinion about things. But I'm going to pass things along as I see them and I understand them and what I believe to be as truth. But this is, like I said, my belief and my opinion on these things. I think that our government is done. I think the federal government of the United States is over. I don't think that we have a functional government. I don't think our Constitution is working the way it was intended. I think it has been compromised. I think it has been subverted. I think it has taken decades and perhaps generations to make this happen. But unfortunately, this is where we are right now.
Hey, welcome back. And joining us today is returning guest Mike Harris of the Intel Drop. Mike, how you been?
I've been well. Thank you, Christian. Thanks for inviting me back on again. I do appreciate the opportunity here. And again, it is an honor when people actually tune in and listen. I do appreciate the use of the platform and the venue. Thank you.
Well, we've got listeners, obviously, not only on YouTube, but on Spotify and Apple Podcasts and a myriad of other platforms. So your message goes far and wide out there.
Well, let's hope so. And, there's been a news day already. I hadn't processed the recent news much less. Now I got more news coming in. Tulsi Gabbard's resignation is, the news of the minute here. Really, it's been the last 30 minutes or so. But she will be missed, and this was forecast to me probably a month and a half, 7 weeks ago, that I was told she was going to be gone by the end of the year. It just happened much faster than I had anticipated. So I'm sorry to see her go. I think she was about as close to an honest broker we're going to get within our federal government. I just don't see that many people in there who really reek of integrity or honesty. And I think she's about as close as we were going to have. But the main issue that I wanted to talk about, why I eagerly accepted the invitation to come on today, was what has happened to Thomas Massie. And personally, I am so offended by what happened, where we have the Jewish oligarch class in our country coming in and dumping exorbitant amounts of money. I mean, I've heard between $32 and $35 million on a Republican primary. That kind of money has never, ever been spent on a primary before. And, Massie won his district by 71% last election. He increased his vote count by 19% over what he had last time, and he still lost. The turnout for this election was essentially double what it was in the 2024 cycle there. So the Jewish oligarchs came in and just dumped a lot of money. The sad fact in the United States is that 96% of the time, the candidate who spends most money wins the election. And then there's been other suspect things that have happened. Again, last minute mail-in voting, the challenger there, whatever his name was, he in the last minute, he had 10,800 some votes came in, and he beat Massie by 10,200 and something votes. So we're seeing this skullduggery again. I don't trust our election process at this point in time at all. And the fact that, Massie was the only Republican member of Congress who did not and would not take money from the Jewish lobby. And so all the other congressmen in there really represent a foreign state. They don't represent you or me or anybody in that district, or any of our congressional people don't represent us. We don't pay them as much as the Israeli lobby pays them. So they represent those interests. They do not represent ours. And for him to be the only Republican who did not take Jewish money from Israel to advance Israeli interest, and to have them destroy him the way he did end his career this way, it's criminal to me. I am so offended by it. unbelievable. And so I decided to get out and speak. I'm going to be a little more forward, a little harder edge than I've been. I've got to be careful about how I phrase things and how I do things. And I want to emphasize above all else, these are my opinions, and it's up to each of you to make your own opinion about things. But I'm going to pass things along as I see them and I understand them and what I believe to be as truth. But this is, like I said, my belief and my opinion on these things. But I think that our government is done. I think the federal government of the United States is over. I don't think that we have a functional government. I don't think our Constitution is working the way it was intended. I think it has been compromised. I think it has been subverted. I think it has taken decades and perhaps generations to make this happen. But unfortunately, this is where we are right now. Our government is broken. This does not represent the will of the American people. It does not represent the Republican process by which the democratic process by which our republic is established on. It doesn't represent it. This is not the will of the people. This is not how things work. When big Jewish money can come in and influence an election in a minor Kentucky jurisdiction, that a congressional district, that like I said, that offends me, and I'm not angry yet. I'm just so alarmed at this and how bold-faced and how brazen and just how abrupt they have been with showing us their power. And they recently showed us their power in another way, the murder of Charlie Kirk in a public venue, broad daylight, as he was getting ready to distance himself from Israel. What people don't need to understand also is that it was a week or so ago that Thomas Massie introduced a bill into the House to make AIPAC, the American Israeli Public Affairs Committee, register as a foreign agent. John F. Kennedy tried this in late October of 1963. It was murdered November 23rd of 1963. So this is how that side plays the game. And they have hijacked our country. They have perverted our Constitution. They have bribed and compromised our elected officials. And I take deep, deep offense to this. And I think we need to retaliate in whatever legal and moral means that we have. But a price has to be paid for this. When these billionaire Jews can come in here and just buy an election, understand who these people are. I mean, they talk about Miriam Adelson, Sheldon Adelson, gambling people. Well, in addition to gambling, I have been told, I'm taking this on conjecture, not stating this fact, but I have been told that they also have a huge stake in tremendous cash flow from human trafficking. If you go to Las Vegas, the prostitution issue is, out in the open there, and they're not going to leave that money on the table. I'm going to assume that is a correct statement, but I have no proof to substantiate it. But these things are offensive to me. This guy Paul Singer, he's a private equity guy. He's the guy who bought Bass Pro Shop in Cabela's, merged the two, and then killed Cabela's. Killed off the commercial side, put that Nebraska town out of business where it originated from, and just destroyed a local economy there. These are not friends of the American people. These are people who are in our country, who are looting this country, abusing our political processes, and they've essentially hijacked our country. This is no longer our government. This is not the government of the people of the United States. This is in violation of the Declaration of Independence. This is in violation of much of the Constitution as it was written. But the precedents have been set. This has been going on for decades, the process of getting us to this point. But this is where we are. We are no longer a free country. We have lost our sovereignty. Our elected representatives are bought and paid for by a foreign government, the interest of a foreign government. And I am offended by it. Everyone should be offended by it. And so that's my opening monologue there for you. So,
a lot of increased volatility here recently. Obviously, you touched on Tulsi Gabbard. Obviously Massie. I've been seeing that quite a bit there. Um, I know some people in the audience have kind of mixed feelings with Massie. I'm just playing devil's advocate for one side of the spectrum. Some thinking that this is part of the kayfabe stuff, but at least at least official narrative wise, I admired some of the stuff that was espoused by him, and I suspect a lot of others. And I think uh, the quote unquote MAGA movement has been decapitated by events like this. So and so on and so forth. So yeah, it's we're entering hotter and hotter waters, and I'm being kind of vague here, but yeah, it's
You just made a comment there, and what I'm seeing on this end is, I have a brother, and he is a huge Trump fan. And he and I had an exchange today where he was happy that Massie was defeated because Trump said he was a bad guy and a terrible congressman and this and that and all these things. And so, I understand that there are still Trump loyalists out there. And it's our job, jobs like people who think like I do, like Marjorie Taylor Greene or Tucker Carlson or Nick Fuentes or Stu Peters. It's our job to win these people over who are still Trump supporters, and win them over to our side and show them the error in their thinking. And the error is where Trump has sold us out and betrayed us. I mean, the one of the reasons I voted for Trump explicitly was the promise of no new wars, and particularly in the Middle East. So here we are, we're in a war with Iran. It doesn't appear to be any way out of it. But that's not what he campaigned on. It's not what I voted for him on. The other issue is the mass deportations. I haven't seen mass deportations. I mean, I've seen some lip service to, the worst of the worst, get the criminals out of here. No, that wasn't the deal. The deal was get them all out of here. We do not need foreigners in our country. We just don't need them. And there's other abuses that began under Biden with these H-1B visa plans. And these are being abused. I mean, just today, Amazon announced that they laid off, 27,000 people, and they're bringing in 25,000 people from India on H-1B visas. So they're laying off their American workforce and they're replacing them with 25,000 people from India coming in, who are going to work for probably 30% less than what an American would work for. And it's a tragedy, but I'll get to more on that later because I've got some time dedicated to discussing the takeover of technology companies in the U.S. with Hindi CEOs who were then laying off the American workforce who built the company and bringing in the Hindi workforce right behind them to replace them for cheaper money. And this is all driven by Blackstone, Blackstone has great influence over who gets the CEO job. And so, but I'll get to that a little later. But, we've just got a lot of problems in this country. And one of the things that I want to start with about my today's criticism is, we need a new government. We don't just need a new president. We don't just need a few new senators and congressmen. We need a new government. We need from top to bottom. We need anyone who's currently in office, currently holds an office, to be removed, all of them. And then we need to remove the bureaucracy that goes with it. One of the things that the Trump presidency has made obvious is that there's a bureaucracy that stands behind the president that doesn't change. And it's been highly influenced over the last decades by left-wing thinking and left-wing people who hold those positions are oriented, toward the Democrat point of view. And they're not following the will of the people. We vote for candidates based on the premise that the candidate has an influence and has the ability to direct policy and how the federal government implements that policy. Policy is generated in the House and the Senate. That's where the laws are actually written. But how it's implemented is by the executive. And the Trump presidency has proved that bureaucracy is not sensitive to the direction of the executive branch. So that also tells us that's another flaw, another break in our government that needs to be addressed and needs to be fixed. And if you have to replace these people, you have to replace them. They've written bills, they've protected themselves. Look at this happened under President Carter, was the creation of the Senior Executive Service, where essentially you have these bureaucrats within the government who occupy the senior positions, and they can't be fired. They're essentially what you would call the flag officers of the civilian part of the of the government. And so these things need to be addressed. It's one thing to have a policy. I mean, you can have a policy for no smoking, but how well it's enforced or not enforced is really up to the people who are occupying those positions, those administrative positions. And we've seen, like I said, a lot of resistance to this for implementing what Trump wanted. Well, that's not how our system's designed. That's not the assumptions that the American people live with. We live with the fact that, well, we had a Republican sweep. We've got all Republicans in office. Things should go the way the Republicans want on toward free enterprise and more conservative values, but it doesn't go that way. It doesn't work. But if it goes the other way towards the left, towards the more progressive, communist side, then of course everything sweeps that way. And so the conservative side loses ground on these cycles and never regains it, whereas the Democrat, the progressive leftist side, gains ground everywhere. When you have a Republican control, it makes no change. It just holds where it is. It doesn't go back to being more conservative. It just stops going left. But when the left is then, it moves even further left, and then it never comes back. It's kind of like Fabianism in one direction, not the other. So this is not how the system is supposed to work. This is not how our government was designed per the Constitution. So ergo, the Constitution has been corrupted. It's flawed. We've had these years and years of all these Supreme Court precedent-setting things that are slowly starting to be unwound a little bit. But it's painful work, and it like I said, it just doesn't work. And the fact that our electoral process, where a guy like Massie can get bought out of his seat by $35 million worth of spending by a particular interest group, because he produced legislation to make Israel or AIPAC report as a foreign agent. That this is just over the top. It's just proving again that the Jews are in control, and they're going to rub our nose in it every damn day. Anybody who stands up, anyone who speaks out, is going to be crushed because their power is absolute. Well, I'm sorry, I'm not buying it. I'm not going to give up my First Amendment right. This is a right from God. It's not a permission or a privilege from the government. And I'm going to speak my mind. I'm going to moderate myself a bit, but I hope people will get the idea.
Noted. Yeah, it's I think the Jews have been. I mean, obviously, you have, and by Jews, I mean specifically this. From what I hear from people, Sabbatean, Frankist element leadership, which is, uh, something out of a Bond villain sort of character. The leadership there.
Let me interject. I'm glad you brought that up. One of the things that I have told people to do is to watch the Daniel Craig series of Bond movies. Watch them all. But the one called Spectre, and it's about the identity of this hidden organization out there that's into everything, and they're everywhere. They're holding security clearances that are guarding the British head of MI6. They've invaded her bodyguard detail. They're that good. They're that ubiquitous. And I'm saying that is Judea International right there. They just call it Spectre. They make it, they dress them up. They infer that they have Nazi roots, but it's really Judea International, I should say. But that was a good catch there. I got a patch on the back. He did the math. He got it.
Yeah, it's and I had on another person. I haven't released the episode yet, but we dived into some stuff that Carrie and I touched on, as well as I'll just say Rome. So I keep bringing that up because I know we hear a lot about the tiny hats, but I can't help but also mention other other parties or other actors that I think
Other
are
influences upon the global stage here.
yeah,
Yes.
exactly. And some other things here. What are your well? Before I deviate and talk about some other talking points here, I wanted to continue on that thread. Other observations that you have, other commentaries that you have regarding what you're seeing.
Well, one of the things that I've seen, I want to point this out to everyone, and that is the systemic neglect across all cultures of our society. I mean, you look at how run down and worn out our interstate highway system is. It's beat to death, particularly in the blue cities. Where'd the money go for that? I mean, we're paying gasoline taxes to pay for highway maintenance. I mean, in some states, it's as high as 50, 60 cents a gallon paying in the taxes on this. Where's that money going? Because it's obviously not going to fix the highway system. And, we have systemic neglect across the board. Look at our school system, how they have devolved. You use things like this racial averaging that they try to do. They try to make all the racial groups perform the same. They have the DEI hiring. They've got they pass kids along who can't read and write, and the lapse of standards and the ability to adhere to standards. Either you can perform math at this level or you can't. Either you can write and read at this level or you can't. And if you can't, you don't pass. You go back and you repeat until you get it right, till you learn. And these have been largely abandoned, where they're afraid to fail kids because there may be a racial influence that negates the
Funding.
assumption that they try to impose upon us that all are equal and all should perform equally. Well, so they keep lowering the standards. So instead of reading at 8th grade level, now you can read at 5th grade level and still pass, or not, as the case may be. And so, how low do you lower the standards to where they have no meaning at all? And that's really how I think things are. And this is going on across a lot of different things. Look at the lack of enforcement from the Securities Exchange Commission. You look at how lax our standards in the military have gotten as far as fitness and the people who they're willing to take, not willing to take. I mean, look at everything that our government touches, everything that is in the public
Arena.
The public stewardship of the government. Let's just say it's all gotten worse. It's not gotten better. They keep lowering the standards. They keep charging more and delivering less. Taxes go up, revenue goes up, but the performance of whatever the government agency or function is doesn't get better. It gets worse, and that's frightening because you can't spend your way out of it. If rubbing more money on it doesn't fix it, why are we putting more money on it? Take money away from it. It's not cost effective to do it that way. But everything everywhere has gotten crappier. I mean, just name it. And this is even going to go into the products that we buy. Things like cell phones. They've never been designed to last for a long time. You get 2 or 3 years out of them, 4 years if you're lucky, and then they break. If they don't break, they don't support the hardware anymore, so it doesn't function the way even if the hardware is good. Everything that we buy, from toasters to lawnmowers to anything that the consumer buys, any consumer products, they're not made to the quality standards that they formerly were. Quality has fallen off the cliff. We pay a lot of money to buy crap, and it's the underlying problem to all of this is we're so deeply in debt that the Ponzi scheme that we're in, this whole system of credit, fiat currency, and all that, it can't go any further. It's dying, and so there's 1.5 million zombie companies out there. And let me define a zombie company for you. That's a company that has enough money to service their debt. They have enough money to buy their goods and materials. They have enough money to pay their people. They don't have enough money for R&D. They don't have enough money for sales and marketing. They don't have enough money to do the things you invest in to grow your business. So you've got viable products and a viable cash flow next year, the year after. And so they're just getting by and they're squeaking by and they're squeaking by. So what are they doing? They're shrinking the amount of cereal you buy in the box. Where you got it was a 12-ounce container, now it's a 10.5-ounce container. These things are going on across the board, and they're using a thinner gauge of steel to make that part. They're using a lighter plastic to make that part. Things break; they don't last, and part of that is by design, because if they made good quality products that lasted 10, 20 years, you'd buy one product and you wouldn't buy it again for 12 or 15 years, but because you wouldn't need to, because the one you have is still functional. And so they just build stuff to break. We become a landfill economy everywhere you turn. We don't buy things that last. I bought a shop vac, and the shop vac, it worked great for 6 months. Then it died. And so I called the company. I said, look, I'm trying to look at this thing. I mean, how do I get this thing apart? I don't see any way of getting your housing on here that's molded shut. I think I'm entitled to the right of repair on appliances like this. They sent me a new one because they didn't want the right of repair challenged. But things are not made to be fixed. They're not made for you to go in there and access and change out that switch that cost $1. It's not made for that. They want you to throw it away. They want you to give up on it. They want you to discard it and buy something new from them. And so that is how our economy is based right now. Everything that you touch, everything that you do, nothing is built with durability into it. It's all built to be expendable. And I find this not to be a very smart way to go. This is really stupid. I don't want to buy another cell phone every 3 or 4 years. I don't want to buy another shop vac every so many years, or a toaster or anything else. I want to buy it. I want to forget about it for the next 2 decades. When it's in the closet, I bring it out. I want to kick it on. I want it to work. I want the vacuum cleaner to suck. That's what I want it to do. I don't want to have to replace it, on a predetermined, a pre-engineered failure schedule, so they can sell you another one. And that's why when you register your products, they track you. They have a pretty good idea about what it's going to fail, and they'll send you some coupon in the mail or something that says, here's a discount coupon for your next one. And 3 days later, the damn thing breaks. So what do you do? Well, I got that coupon. I'll buy another one. So we deserve better than this. We really do. The fact that we sit back and take it, and that's all we have offered to us. This stinks. And as I said, the problem is, without unending growth, this entire system collapses. Well, it can't grow anymore. Everyone is too much in debt. There's not enough commerce to sustain the economy as it is. So there's going to be contractions just because of that. And all the crap you've bought that's been made under this paradigm of limited lifespan, whenever this economy crashes, and it's going to crash, and your device, whatever it may be, it breaks, it won't power up, you're out of luck, because you won't be able to get a new one until this economy restarts. And that may take some time, up to a decade, according to some of the people I talk to. So.
Well, that's what I'm hearing on my end as well. I just had a gentleman by the name of Simon Hunt on previously. I don't know how familiar you are with him. He's actually an interesting guy I should have you connect with. He started his career, I just found out the other day, in 1956 in Rhodesia, if I'm saying that right. Yeah, over there in the Central Africa. And anyhow, he worked under a number of different firms and people. Anyhow, he's senior there in age, and he's over in Dubai, so I connect with him here and there. But he's saying, of course, they all say, hey, it's this year, hey, it's next year. Who knows when, but he has said, yeah, we're, should be here before long. And just.
Well, it's one of these things. Nobody wants this thing to collapse. Is it going to? Yeah, it's going to. Is it going to? long term, it'll be good for us because if we collapse the system as it is now, the financial system in particular, it will be good for us. What we cannot allow is any kind of a digital currency, a central bank digital currency, where we give the same people who are driving our country into ruin control over our personal finances, how far we can travel. I mean, we cannot allow that. But if the financial system crashes and burns, and we have a chance to participate in constructing a new financial system, it could work out quite well for the American people. It'll be a tough time for a while, but if we can, get a system that's based on sound money, the two things that a society needs to really flourish is sound money and a stable tax code. If you don't have sound money, and we haven't had sound money since the Federal Reserve was created, and it's gotten worse and worse. They've lost 99% of the value of the dollar as it was back in 1913. It's gone. A penny, a dollar now buys what a penny did back then. I mean, that's a pretty sad state of affairs. And their job was to preserve the value of the dollar and control inflation. They've done neither. And so they need to be disbanded. They need to go. But, these are just the things that society thrives on. If you have sound money and, you can count on the value of something. I mean, your wages you actually buy something. It's predictable. It's and it's stable going forward. As it is now, you're not stable. If you made $100,000 5 years ago, how much do you need to make now to keep pace with that? If inflation is, at 10, 12%, the number gets pretty big pretty fast. It's hard to keep up with that. No one's wages do. So that everyone has to tighten their belt. Everyone's seen what the cost of food has done since Biden since COVID is when that started. And so, the cost of food has probably doubled or tripled since then. You go to the grocery store, you spend $100, you get nothing. You fill up a bag. It's pretty discouraging. Whereas, 5 years ago, you spent $100, you could eat for a week and a half. You're okay. But these are the things that are needed that we haven't had, and we have to change this. It's not going to change itself. Too many people out there getting rich on the system as it is, while it's grinding the balance of us to death. The majority of us are suffering through this. So why do we allow this? Why do we put up with this kind of crap? It's time for us to assert ourselves in whatever way is effective that will get their attention. And it's not going to be a negotiation. It's going to be our way or the highway. We're not going to put up with them. We have allowed them to impoverish a great portion of our country and a great portion of good, hardworking Americans. We've taken the American dream away. If you're under 35 years old, you probably can't afford a house. You may never be able to afford a house until we change this. And that's another thing I want to talk about is this whole real estate issue. And how is real estate affected by illegal immigration? And this is a little conversation whiplash here, but put up with me. The guy, Greg Bovino, who was the guy on the ground up in Minneapolis, who was directing the operations up there when those two radicals were shot. Those two progressive innocents who were shot. He came out and said that there's not, he said there's over 100 million illegal aliens in the country. And this is a guy who is an insider. If anybody would know, he should know. I've been saying for a few years that it's 55, 65 million, and I was low. I was under his estimate at 100 million. And he brings out the receipts and he tells you why. If there's 100 million illegal aliens in this country, do you understand why people can't afford their apartments? They can't afford to buy a house now because we have 100 million people who weren't invited in this country, who are occupying space and competing with our youth for adequate housing. These people need to go. Now, it's my theory that one of the reasons Trump backed off on that issue about the mass deportations was he was whispered in his ear, probably by Howard Lutnick. I'm guessing, that's my guess, that if he deports 100 million illegal aliens, that two things are going to happen. Inflation is going to go wild because wages are going to have to go way up to get Americans to work jobs that illegals are filling right now, and that the real estate market is going to crash from the bottom up, from the entry level up, because you're going to have 100 million people who aren't out there looking for housing in the United States in our jurisdictions. And so that is one of the reasons that I suspect Trump got soft on that, why he no longer cared about deporting the masses. The other reason is that all the companies and all the businesses out there that hire illegals are screaming at him that if you get rid of the illegals, we're going to have to be paying 20, 25, 30 bucks an hour to get Americans to come take these jobs. And, I'll go back to a saying that, George W. Bush came out and he says, I think it was George, I mean, it's John McCain, one of the two. They're both rhinos. Anyway, the saying was that these are jobs Americans won't do. And my counter to that is it's not jobs that Americans won't do. It's not jobs that Americans are going to do for minimum wage. You're going to have to pay Americans, a premium to do these jobs if they're dirty, if they're unpleasant, if it's backbreaking work, because our welfare state is so plush and so luxurious that you have to really give them a motivation to go out there. And I blame the welfare state on the generosity and the largesse of the welfare state for the reason that situation exists, and that we have to pay higher wages to Americans because the welfare state enables that. And so all of these problems are interrelated. They're all connected. And, you don't mind paying people and you don't mind paying them a premium, but their productivity has to match the premium. If you want to make more money, do better work, do more work, accomplish more, make yourself more valuable. And that's, the maxim that I live my life by, was trying to be the most valuable player I could in the economy. And that's how everyone has to view this. Not that I have a minimum wage job. I'm going to do, they pay me minimum wage. I'm going to perform minimum work. That's not how it's supposed to work. We're supposed to have a means that if you work hard and you make yourself more valuable, you make more money. And so we need to change our paradigm back to what it had formerly been back when we had a more productive economy. The way that things have been, what's the right word? Degraded. Degraded by these progressive welfare policies that what is minimum wage? Everybody cries about it and things. It goes back to Karl Marx. He said the great struggle of our time is the battle between capital and labor, and so we need to empower labor. Labor needs to be empowered. My grandfather was president of the Steelworkers Union in Missouri for 26 years. I grew up in that type of environment. And if you want to make more money, you have to become more productive, and that gets rewarded. Whereas, just a minimum wage for slackers, people who don't want to produce, don't want to work, everybody else ends up carrying them. So we need to rethink how we do things, because what we're doing is not working anymore. This liberal experiment, this progressive experiment's been an unmitigated failure, as far as I can see. And it's time to retool our entire economy. So.
Well, okay, yeah, you covered a number of different topics there. I'm just like literally taking that all in. Yeah, when you speak about illegals, I'm out here in Central California, which is the breadbasket of the world in many respects. We have a lot of farm workers out here, and there's been a lot of contention over the decades, over the years, pertaining to illegals and things of that nature. And then, obviously, 4 hours south of me is Los Angeles, and that is in many respects the epicenter. I'd say probably that and SF for a lot of the policies and kind of the. I'm not going to blanket statement everybody there, but certain cohorts there that propagate things and policies that continue to plague us and not to just denigrate the left. I see more and more that we are basically in, not to sound doom and gloom, but I thought Jason Christoff used a good term, the prison planet. I do think that this is basically, I think it's an open air prison basically. And to your point, where things don't last very long, and what food and nutrition that you are afforded as a person is reflected in that desire to uh, depopulate us, for lack of a better term, to render us sterile and null and void.
Well, you bring up a good point. It's something I was going to get to a little later in the day, but I'll address it now. And that is, what is the origin of this depopulation agenda? What is the real origin? And the origin is that the banking system had allowed the economy to grow too long, too fast, too well, um, which supported a greater global population, to where the global population is north of 8 billion people now and approaching 9. And so they screwed up. They allowed too much growth, too much expansion in the economy and in the population, and now they have to trim it back because they let it get out of hand. They're if they haven't lost control, they're on the verge of losing control, and so they're trying to correct their mistake, and that's where I think this comes from, because this was their screw up. They could have managed the population in a different way. I mean, you look at countries around the world, different living standards and things. If the Westerners had not gone in, you go in to colonize, you try to asset resources, mining, all that type of stuff. You get that stuff out of there, but they also try to develop them as consumer markets as well, hoping these people would consume. And so they're bringing in medicines, they're bringing in food from other places. They're allowing these populations to survive and live longer and longer. And these are populations that extremely low IQ in some places. I mean, look at the country of Cameroon. The average IQ is 64, which means average. That's the mean. Half or below that, half or above. But 64 as an average is pretty low. In this country, anyone with less than 70 is considered to be developmentally disabled. So what do you do when you have an entire country of people who are, the average is considered substantially developmentally disabled, and can't.
Oh, I'm sorry. I just love the way you phrase that. It's very, very poetic, but please, yeah.
Well, but it's the truth, and we're as Westerners, we're told that, these are your equals, and diversity is our strength, and so no, diversity should scare the shit out of you, because not the rest of the world is not like you, white boy. The rest of the world is not like you at all, and so you better wake up to that and figure out that with your average IQ of 100 and their average IQ at 64. You've got a problem with them, and they're never going to be able to sustain themselves in your society. So you're going to end up supporting them for the rest of your life. And then you're going to have to be careful, because when things don't go their way, they're going to get violent with you and clock you upside the head and rape your women. And so, diversity is not a strength. It's a detriment. It's death to white cultures, because, they're a burden to us, and they come into our society, and we have welfare programs. We have to feed them. We have to house them. We have to do all the things. Why do we want that burden? It makes our lives harder. We have to give up more of our, fruits of our labor, our wages, and return on investment that we make to support these people who are here, who were brought here. So no, diversity is not your strength. It is death. It is a detriment to you and the lifestyle you ever want to live. So you get that out of your mind. I mean, these people are never going to produce nothing. Look at the Somalis up in Minnesota. These are stupid people. These people are dumb on the IQ scale, but they're smart enough to scam the U.S. government and take 90 billion here and 100 billion there. But like I said, the conflict between the societies. I'll use it. This one's from Matt Bracken, and I'm a fan of his. I listen to him frequently. But Matt says, you can't bring these people in here from a low trust environment into our high trust environment. This is basically a high trust environment. Our women are supposed to be safe and be able to walk down the street at night and not get molested, not get raped. You should be able to leave things on a store shelf and not have them get stolen and run out the door. So you can't integrate the low trust society with a high trust society. And it goes back that you have to have people that are congruent with your society if they're going to be in it. And if they can't adapt, they're a danger. They're a detriment to your society, to your culture. And so you have to deal with things realistically here. And all of this, diversity is strength. This is a crock of shit. I'm tired of listening to that nonsense. I've seen it for myself, and we all have. I've traveled the world. I've probably been in 60 different countries in my lifetime, and you cannot bring those elements and put them down in the United States and expect them to function here. They're going to thrive, but you're going to wilt. You're going to wither because they're going to make your life live in hell having them around you. That's just how it is.
Yeah, you're making me think of a lot of the stuff I see overseas over in Ireland and in parts of the UK and other parts of Western Europe, the crises that has been going on for some time. I have some clips here as well I can share at some point that I think are interesting. I'll have to pull them up here momentarily, but there's well, I guess before I deviate too much here, I know you had a lot of things that you wanted to just unpack, unless you feel like you
No,
touched on those.
I'm not even halfway through page 1 yet. I've got
Okay.
6 pages of notes here.
Okay. Well, I will hold off here right now, and feel free if you'd like to.
Well, let's just look at what's going on in our country. And we're just talking about this, and we look at the illegal immigration problem in our country, where let's assume Greg Bovino, the former chief of Customs and Border Patrol, or whatever it is correct. And there's 100 million people here. We do have the replacement of our population. We have high real estate prices because of it. We have higher everything. We have lower paying jobs because of it. These things don't benefit the American people at all. I mean, these are invader forces. They're coming here with the same mindset as the colonists came here. They're in and the early settlers. They're coming here to make a better life, and they're coming here to take what is here from who's ever here before them. That's what their mindset is. They're coming here not to integrate. They're coming here to take it from you, and they don't care what you think. They're here to make themselves rich. I look at the tech companies lately that have been hijacked. Let me pull something up here. It's hang on, bear with me, folks. I'm sorry for the bad manners.
No worries. As you pull that up, I'll just share. This is tangentially. I saw this on Hal Turner show. I guess CBS News Radio is shutting down after 100 years. So not that that's any loss. I just thought I'd share that. I thought that was interesting. 700 U.S. stations go off air after nearly 100 years.
Yeah, I got what I have here. It says new data shows once an Indian CEO gets hired at a major company, what follows is Americans get pushed out and their jobs are replaced by Indians on the H-1B visa program. Just, I think it was yesterday, Amazon announced they're firing 27,000 people and they're hiring 25,000 Indians on H-1B visas at 30% less, across the board, 30%. But you look at Google has an Indian CEO, Microsoft, Indian CEO, YouTube, Indian CEO, Adobe, IBM, Infosys, NetApp, Arista Networks, Novartis, Micron, Semiconductor, Honeywell, Flex, Naya Fair, Chanel, Shantunu, Cognizant, Vertex, Zscaler, FedEx, all have Indian CEOs. And when they get Indian CEOs, they fire the American workforce and they hire H-1B visas, or they move those jobs over into India. And these are American companies, publicly held. Where does this influence come from to hire Indian CEOs when they know that's going to happen? Well, you look at BlackRock, Vanguard, and State Street, and you look at the influence they have in the stake that they hold in every one of those companies I mentioned, and you see who has the influence to ensure that a Indian CEO is hired, knowing that that Indian CEO is going to fire Americans and hire H-1B visas or relocate that job function out of the USA. Our government is asleep at the wheel. They are failing us once again. When American workers have to lose these jobs, I mean, I'm sorry, 25,000 jobs out of Amazon, that's a big deal. I don't have all the numbers for all the rest of those companies, but it's up on X. I'm taking it as a fact. And, we can all do our own homework and find out if it's true or not. But this is not the American dream. The American dream is not going to be possible in this country anymore. And white Americans are being displaced at the most rapid rate ever. And it's time for we as white Americans to stand up and defend our own people. I mean, these Hindis didn't build this country. My people did. I was the seventh generation in my family born in this country, and there's been 2 generations after me. So there's 9 generations of my family line that have lived in this country for the last 200 plus years. I'm not willing to get out of the way and give it all over to the Hindis or to the Muslims or to the Hispanics or anybody else who comes here. In fact, I want to revert this country back to a majority white country where the strength of it was, but what put us on the map in the first place. These people, aren't going to get it done. If they could, their countries would be the economic powerhouses, but yet we don't see that. We see third world shitholes, and they're going to come here and they're going to turn this into a third world shithole. Well, and I'm not willing to stand by for that. I want to leave this place better than it was whenever I was born into it. I want to leave a mark on it that makes the legacy of me and my generation better for our kids, our grandkids, our great grandkids, and that's how it should be. The Indians had a saying. They actually had 2 sayings that I like, and if it's not good for everybody, it's not good for anybody. And so that's one that we need to pay attention. And our planning, this country, one of our great failures is our failure to plan into the distance. And if we can't plan and visualize what we want to see for 7 generations, then we're blind, and we need to do better. We owe our offspring, our successors,
Legacy.
Our legacy. We owe them better than this, and we need to start planning and looking long term so that our kids do better than we did, their kids do better than they do, and create this momentum going forward that they're all going to benefit this for long term, and that's what we should all be doing. But what do we see instead? We see our government. We see a government that has turned toxic to its citizens. It appears that our government is trying to do things to harm us. They're trying to do things to help others who invade our country, but they're not doing anything to help us. And so how do we deal with a government that's toxic? Well, we replace it. But what's the recourse to replace it? Our elections, we can't trust. They can be bought. They can be influenced by foreign money, by for the benefit of foreign governments. And where did the American people come out of this? How do we benefit from this? So I don't think we're going to be able to vote our way out of this. I think the only way out is to go kinetic on it at some time. Do I want to see that in my country? Hell no. I do not want to see it. I'm not advocating for it, but I'm certainly not willing to live and continue with the trends it's going, because I can see what a disaster this is going to be within 5 years, 10 years, much less 2 or 3 generations. So.
Yeah. I suspect that, you've got different actors behind the scenes, and I'd love to hear perhaps you could share some of the conversations that you've had with people, conversations, of course, that you're able to share, offline, the connections that you have all over the world, especially in senior level positions. It does seem that you have a push for some type of armed conflict here soon.
Well, do I want an armed conflict? Do I advocate for an armed conflict? Absolutely not. That's not what I'm about. But I see where the citizens in this country, the people who this government holds power because of the people and the will of the people. Without that, this government couldn't exist, and we're stuck with this right now, where there is no way for citizens to redress their grievances. Our election systems are compromised. The incumbents have a 90% return rate. Okay, so we don't really have very very low churn in politicians, if you will. Very few of them. Once they're in for the duration. Can't get rid of them. 96% of the time, the candidate with the most money wins. We got the Massie thing that just happened this week, where a guy who is extremely successful, extremely popular, his seat was bought out from under him. We saw it happen. We suspect there's cheating in there. Can't prove it, but we suspect that there is. And so, what course of action do we have? How do we redress our grievances? No one I know is happy. No one I know is happy with our foreign policy, which is an unmitigated disaster. Unmitigated. The war in Ukraine, unmitigated disaster. The war with Iran, unmitigated disaster. Support for Israel, an unmitigated and expensive disaster. All of these things, this is not what the American people want. This is not what we voted for. Trump said America first, not Israel first. And that's all I'm seeing is Israel first, everything he does. And these Epstein files, let's bring that up again. He was at least pretending he was doing okay until that came up. And then once that came up, he totally went full Israel puppet. So we're pretty certain that this was an Israeli Mossad operation. And we're pretty certain that they must have a lot of good material on him, because otherwise, why would he turn on his base? Why would he betray the people who put him in office? Unless he was just a big con job the entire time. And quite frankly, I'm not smart enough to figure that out. But I voted for him 3 times. I liked the message. He had. And, it reminds me of a joke. Politician, I'll take a minute to tell you. Politician dies unexpectedly. He's up in heaven, St. Peter's, and says, well, you're here, you're sitting right on the fence, whether you go to heaven or hell. I mean, you've done some good things, done some bad things. So we'll let you make the choice. And the guy says, heaven or hell? Well, St. Peter says, look, I'll let you spend 24 hours in each place. After that, you can make your decision. Okay, boom, the guy's in hell. Boy, he looks around and goes, this is hell? He's on this golf course. It's, fairways every place. And there's a swimming pool and a cocktail lounge and all the things that country clubs have that are really nice. And he goes in there, there's a whole bunch of his friends there that he's grown up with, people he's known his whole life, and buddies. And they golf, they drink, they have a great time, have a great steak dinner. Wonderful time. 24 hours up, boom, he's back up in at St. Peter's gates. Well, then, it's okay, it's time to go to heaven. So poof, he wakes up in heaven. And he's there, and they're floating around in clouds. They're playing a few harps. It's kind of dull, kind of dry, kind of, ho-hum. So 24 hours goes by. He's back in front of St. Peter's gates. He goes, well, where do you want to spend eternity? The politician says, I looked at it and said, I got to tell you, I'm kind of leaning towards hell. Heaven was it was nice enough, but it was a little dry, a little boring, but hell was my kind of folks. I mean, there's golf, there's my friends, there's swimming, there's anything I wanted was there. It's my kind of life. I'll take that. Poof, he's in hell. Well, he wakes up, he's down there, and it's a barren wasteland everywhere he looks. There's smoke from tires and stuff. Everything's a dump, a garbage pit. Everything's terrible. Devil walks up to him and says, hey, welcome back. So you made your decision, huh? He goes, yeah, I did, but what's going on here? This wasn't what it was like the other day. I was here. It was a country club. It was great. There was fairways. There was cute girls driving the beer cart around and stuff. It was a wonderful place. Devil says, yeah, that was the campaign. This is reality.
Nah, that's a good one.
Anyway, sorry to bore you with the joke.
No, not at all. No, not at all. I haven't heard that one before. Wow. Let me see here, and I can always edit some stuff out here if deep.
Whole thing out if you want. That's okay.
No. I'm talking about on my end. That I enjoyed here. Boy, that was good. This is here. I'll go off tangent here. With some stuff that I've seen circulating here on X, and I'll share the screen here. Just things that I think are interesting here. Let me pull this up here real quick. Let's see. Oh, here we go. Okay, let me make sure this is right. Okay, yeah, you can see. Okay, so here's
Yeah, I saw that one.
yeah. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, it looks like he's wearing a really nice mask and forgot to wear a turtleneck. Should have, or something rephrase, should have worn the turtleneck, not the crew neck.
Yeah,
He kind of blew that one. It looks like. If that's, I'm not saying that's what it is, but boy, it sure
sure.
looks suspect.
Oh my gosh, yeah, this has been wow. Yep. Well, I guess these face masks are very real out there.
Or is this more just AI crap that we're dealing with?
Sure.
Either way, it's just
Absolutely, absolutely. What else here? Okay, well, there's Simon Dixon. He's talking about some stuff there. Who controls the world? This is an interesting account. Red Pill Bot, DeepSeek. Um, anyhow, I thought I'd share that one here. Let me get off here real quick. All sorts of stuff you see.
well, there is all kinds of things to see. This is a little bit of a related tangent, but
Mhm.
one of the things that's a challenge for people, and I want to challenge people out there to do it because there's been a wave of this over the last 20, 30 years, and that is the integration of Judeo into Christian. So we talk about everything of Judeo Christian. That's not how it is. Christianity is night and day different than what Judaism is. And for the Jewish influence to try to link those two religiously is them hiding behind us so that, oh, we're all Judeo Christians. No, we're not. Judaism and Christianity are two very, very different things. And if you don't know the difference, you better look it up because the Talmud is really pretty specific and very brutal, very harsh toward everything that is Christian. And so for them to play their camouflage game of trying to hide themselves among our people, our flock as a Christian country here, is really them just, schmoozing us. They're getting over on us. Again, it's part of their scam. So they do their best when they're operating in a stealthy mode, and that's part of them keeping their camouflage on. So learn to separate what Judeo is and what Christian is. And the other thing is if people worry about food and they worry about vaccines and in the food supply and stuff, if you want to avoid all those things, do your shopping at the kosher market. Because they're not going to put any vaccines in their thing. Their chicken's going to be different. Their beef is going to be different. You're probably not going to get much pork, but do your shopping for your meats there. And if you want to avoid any of the hormones or the toxins or anything, because they're very, very strict when they keep kosher about it. And so if you want their quality of food, shop at their markets, buy them out, make them do without. So, that's it's just an interesting side point there.
How about some other things that you're seeing and observing out there?
Let me change the page. That was just
Sure,
page one.
sure, yeah. I wanted to make sure we covered everything.
Well, we look at the situation in the Middle East. Let's go back to that. Let's go back to the situation in Iran. And the USS Gerald Ford just came back from the longest deployment since Vietnam. They're out for 11 months. And what is not being talked about outside of the military is that there was active mutinies on not just the USS Ford, but on other ships in the Mediterranean as well. We all heard the story about how they were flushing T-shirts and towels and everything down the toilet. There was a lot more going on than that, where the crews were in active mutiny. They didn't want to be there. They don't want to be there. The war with Iran is not supported by the rank and file of the military across the board. No one wants to go and fight and die in Iran for a war for Israel. So let's just get that out there and get that on public record, because these are things you're not going to hear in your mainstream media. You're going to see Trump at the Coast Guard graduation. You're going to see him here and there, posing in front of the flags with these people in uniform. But the real military in the combat theater or the proposed combat theater were actually in mutiny conditions against the U.S. Their chain of command. because they just didn't want to do it. They don't. No one wants to die for Israel. No one. No American soldiers, sailors, Marine, airmen, or Coast Guard want to die for Israel. No one does.
Well, you see a lot of that out there on these various platforms. A lot of, as I've mentioned previously, a lot of the young people that make up the armed forces, they are not watching legacy media by and large. They are they're getting it from other sources. So we
Yeah,
shall
they are,
see.
and it's time, and because one of the bad things that happened in the last few months was the acquisition of TikTok from by Ellison, the guy who owns Oracle. These are more Zionist types, and they're going to kill TikTok. They're going to so censor the platform to where you're not going to get any honest feedback in there. X has got, like I said, I want to see a truly free and open dialogue. And, our those little fellows who wear those little tiny hats just cannot allow that because it undermines their position. It threatens them because, the truth shall set you free from their chains, but that's it. But there's just, there's tons of things going on against us. I mean, I'm going to advocate for everyone to get off of social media because the way this Palantir system is, people are getting called up on and challenged on things they put on Facebook, 5, 10 years ago. I mean, they're getting in trouble for old stuff. So get off of it. I mean, I got off of Facebook, about 10, 12 years ago. I haven't had any social media presence for that reason because it leaves a, breadcrumbs, and new administration comes in, they don't like what you wrote, hey, they'll come pick you up. We're turning into the Soviet Union, because these Jewish oligarchs these are the modern Bolsheviks. These are the ones who are going to do to our country what was done to Russia, Tsarist Russia, back when they took power there. They're going to try to do the same thing here. This is what I suspect. And this is my opinion again. And so I'm going to assert my First Amendment right to express my opinion. But this is what I think we're looking at. I think we're looking at an attempted Bolshevik takeover. And the Massie thing brings that directly into focus for me. That if they can come in there and purchase a seat, for $35 billion in the U.S. Congress, our system is broken. And like I said, we need a new government. The question is, how do you get there from here? The Constitution doesn't work anymore. It's the fact that we're in this position proves it doesn't work. How you water the tree of liberty with the blood of patriots and tyrants, short of having an insurrection, when there's no legal constitutional means to have recall elections to replace the people who are currently holding office. We have these problems. These are problems that are defects within our form of government, to where we cannot recall a sitting president like Donald Trump. If he had to have a European style flash election, he wouldn't stay in office tomorrow. Just wouldn't do it. He'd be gone because he's lost so much support by breaking his promises. But as it is, he can continue to break his promises because there's nothing we can do about it until he's out of office. And then we hope he better leave willingly, because if we have to pry him out of there, it's going to be another whole story. I'm not saying that that's going to happen, but I just don't want to see it happen.
I'm thinking you're going to have somebody. You're going to have a, for lack of a better term, a strongman sort of character to remediate things. I'm thinking of kind of like a Cincinnatus character. I know it sounds kind of
I'm
out there, but
a model for Cincinnatus. And then when he was done and order was restored, he stepped down and went back to farming. Who do we trust with that? That's the question. Trump is already talking about running for the presidency of Israel because he's got a 99% approval rating there. He said that yesterday, that with his high Israeli approval rating, when he's done being president of the U.S., he'll go to Israel and run there. That sounds a little irresponsible to me, a little, out there. But I tell you.
Yeah. Now, as I know, I kind of touched on a little bit earlier, as far as the contacts and sources that you have from people, you know, ex alphabet agencies, et cetera. Any other insights that you've heard from them that you could share? Um,
You know, like I said, I've got pages of notes here. And one of the things that people need to be aware of is we're all about these Epstein files, okay? And what's in there and why isn't it being exposed? You know, Trump has said he has friends in there and that what he's doing is protecting, you know, let me rephrase that. I suspect what he is doing is protecting friends, particularly Jewish friends who are donors of his. And so he's going to protect them at all costs. And that's not what our American system is about. You know, Marjorie Taylor Greene, Nick Fuentes, anybody else out there, Tucker Carlson, who says, you know, Megyn Kelly, expose what's in there. You know, we as the American people have the right to know. And Trump has so damaged himself by coming out as someone who protects pedophiles. And you look at all those women who were there that were testifying, um, you know, about what Epstein had done, how they had been trafficked, how they had been treated, and Trump wants to protect the Epstein class. I'm sorry, I don't. You know, I want to see him, flogged in public. You know, I mean, literally flogged in public. That's what I want to see with the Epstein class. Assets stripped and go work in the salt mine till they die. You know, but this is, you know, women are to be protected. They're not as physically powerful. They're stronger than men in many ways, but physically they're not as powerful. You know, pound for pound, inch for inch of height, etc. But someone who would protect someone who's a pedophile, who would abuse and harm and rape children, unconscionable to me. You know, these people need to be punished with prejudice, and so they don't offend again. You know, end them. So, but you know, Trump was going to do that, campaigned on it, talked about it, but never did it. So, you know, I just can't put up with the guy who made these campaign promises and then doesn't follow through. You know, I want to see not just the criminals deported. I want to see all the illegal aliens deported. Get out of my country. I liked my country better before 1965. You know, before the that Immigration Reform Act, Howard Metzenbaum was behind it. But I want to see our country back to its glory days, back when it was a rising power, not this declining power. And I will circle back to 9/11 is when this really accelerated. You know, I do not believe for a moment that 19 Arabs with box cutters did that. I'm sorry, I don't. I am still of the school of thought that this was an Israeli operation. They may have had cooperation from insiders within our own government, but this was an Israeli operation, and the perpetrators are still out there walking around free. You know, Larry Silverstein, etc. Lutnick was another one. Howard Lutnick was another one who was ran Cantor Fitzgerald, the top 4 floors of the World Trade Center, and didn't go to work that day. Just, you know, some freak of accident. Just so many of these guys have all these reasons that they all didn't show up on the same day when this disaster happens. It just kind of strikes me as a bit odd. And if it was me, I'd be waterboarding these guys, and I'd make them talk the same way they did to the prisoners in Abu Ghraib. You know, I mean, hey, come on, it's good for the goose, it's good for the gander. Let's get the truth out of these sons of guns, and let's tell the world what they did, and then bring in all the perpetrators and execute them accordingly. If their level of treason and criminality against the U.S. is sufficient, we have the right to execute them, and I would really advocate for that, because while these perps are still out walking around, things are getting worse and worse. Their power is growing. Ours is waning. We are losing this war. And it's been an asymmetrical war against us. There's been a few of us out there calling it out for a number of years, but most of the American people are just in a haze. They're in a dream state. They don't see it. Even when people call it out, they still say, you know, no, it couldn't be. It can't be that, but it really is.
well, you know, I'll just say, as it relates to the powers that be running the show. Why do we have what we have in our society? You know, continuously, in engaged in war and class division, all these things, and I don't think it's I don't think it's human. These people that are kind of running it. There's
Well,
there yeah.
that's a whole
Yep.
other point, but
Yep.
I want to address it. Let me make a comment first. One of the things that I said about a while back, our government has turned toxic towards the population, and they're not acting in our best interest, and they've really lost the message that they are public servants versus private citizens. And we're really the power that enables them to be there. But they're trying to seize the reins of power, or they have seized the reins of power, if you will, and they want to subjugate us. And we just cannot allow this to happen. But I look at what you just said a moment ago about the unseen influence on human affairs. And I am thoroughly convinced there is an unseen influence on human affairs. There absolutely is. Um, you can we can't see it working in real time, but if you look back historically, you can see the influences that this unseen hand has had, and you really got to do a lot of extensive reading, to find out what the zeitgeist of the time was, to see what the long range effects of this were. And human beings, we make business plans that are 5 years, 10 years, and usually after 5 or 10 years, what your plan looked like, it deviates from reality, let's just say, but at least it's a set of mileposts. But for something to work on 100-year plan, a 500-year plan, that's beyond the conception of most human beings, and that takes an extraordinary mental ability to be able to do such things. And so I firmly believe that there is an unseen hand meddling in human affairs. I don't know what it is. I know it's malignant to humankind. I know it's predatory, but I don't know who or what, how to identify it, whether it's an interdimensional, the religious people talk about demons, and or it's extraterrestrial, or are they time travelers from the future? Is it some rogue AI from the ancient past? Who knows? I don't, but I definitely see the effects it has on our society. We shouldn't be living like this. We shouldn't have these wars we have. These wars all look like blood sacrifice to me, and that's been pretty much a part of human religion and worship for a very long time. The need for human blood sacrifice. Personally, I don't understand it, and I don't understand what the nature of the entity or entities that would demand or require that would be like. I want nothing to do with them. That's something that I don't want anything that requires a blood sacrifice to prosper. I don't want anything to do with that thing. Get it away from me. I'll tough it out in the poorhouse.
Yeah, okay, so my from what I've heard from people, obviously, I don't know, I can't prove this. I can just share with you what I've piecemealed together. This is my current iteration is yeah, whatever these things are that they perceive us as kind of like vermin, something to be exterminated, but they like to play games with us, and they like to they have these they live a lot longer than us, and um, they see this as kind of like a game, and they are severed off from God slash source, and so they need that energy to sustain themselves, and they get that from people, and I think there's something there to it. I think there's merit to it.
Well, I do too. I think the entire world is waking up. Um, we of the last 100, maybe 200 years, since let's go back to Newton. Since Newton, we've been living in a paradigm of you know um, metrics that we measure within the material realm.
Hmm.
If you can't measure it, if you can't see it, smell it, taste it, whatever, it doesn't really exist. That may not be true. There may be things that exist that are interacting within our world that we cannot see, that we cannot measure. and how we name those is really a different discussion. But we have been in this science. Well, maybe going back before, maybe go back to the Renaissance actually. But since then, we've been living in this material realm where we've created things, we've protected our project. We've had the scientific method. We've got steam engines, internal combustion engines, all these other technologies that enabled us to do things that horse-drawn or muscle-moved world couldn't produce. And we've done a lot of things, and we got away from the fact that there might be other elements or other entities that influence our affairs in this world. And I think that we're going through a time of change now where we're becoming more and more aware that these things that we heard about in fairy tales and ghost stories and religion may actually be more real than we gave them credit for, based on our reliance on the scientific mindset in that the material realm, that the physics of the material realm are what was the extent of what exists. And I think that opening our eyes again and seeing that other things may, I don't want to see us devolve back into a superstitious cult where you gotta shake the bones before you walk out the door and do all kinds of things like that. But I think we also need to be aware that there are other things at work here, that I just can't explain, other than, as you stated, you're going to a somewhat supernatural footing on this. And I think we're going to see this more and more as we go forward.
Yeah, and I also thought I'd mention the disclosure stuff that I've been seeing a little bit on the news, them talking about it, and from what I heard from a source, and I'll release an episode where we kind of dive into this, that whatever they are, they're not good, but there's going to be a narrative push that there is some faction that is good. So that's what I've heard, is that they're gonna, and you've got the Spielberg movie, and you've got this other stuff, kind of dripping it to the public, kind of priming them. So,
Well, I'd like to believe that we do have some benefactor, alien or interdimensional race that's going to at least not be hostile to us, at least not, pick us up by the thousands, to sell in the meat market for, on the hoof, so to speak. I don't. I'd like to think that, but I've also heard that there are other alien races out there that is exactly what they do, and that it's a pretty stark existence for humanity out there among them. So what I know and don't know, I don't have enough direct experience with that. I've never knowingly met one. When I was at the Council to Combat Terrorism and Religious Extremism in Syria, December of 2014, after the conference, I was told by someone that I had actually met 3 off-world humans at that conference, and I couldn't tell who they were. Looked just like us, But I was told that after the fact, and I have no idea who they were because fooled me. So,
without divulging that person's identity, I take it they held, or they had, credentials to what they had to say. Yeah.
that's the word I'll give you, is connected. So, I've made several trips to Syria. One of them I made with a guy who he's deceased now, but he was the former director of clandestine operations for the CIA, and I was in Syria with him, and it's an interesting set of experiences. But I won't discuss much of that today.
Sure.
So,
Very interesting world. I always say
it
that.
is, but we have so much. I mean, we've got so many things, that are stacked against us. I mean, not only do we have the situation in Iran that's there, but we have the situation in Ukraine that's there. And we all talk about Gaza. We talk about how awful Israel is, and the devastation, the genocide against the Palestinian people. Well, you go to Ukraine and you look at the genocide against the Slavic people of Ukraine, and the Slavic people of Russia, who are fighting each other. And This is this is another Jewish um, government in there that's running Ukraine, and they're depopulating it. Zelensky's come out and said that he wants to turn Ukraine into a big Israel and make it a Jewish state. Zelensky said that. I believe that's what he wants to do, and I don't know why Putin is going along with it and going so slow with Ukraine. I don't get it. But the death and the destruction of the Ukrainian population is just terrible. I mean, it's awful. I mean, I've been to Ukraine. I was there in 2004, 5, 6, 7, and maybe 8. I forget. But I was there during the Orange Revolution. I was there when Western powers were trying to topple the government the first time, and it was interesting times. But all of these things are tied together. The Ukraine, Iran, everything that's going on, all the nefarious stuff in the world right now goes back to Judea International, this world global organized Jewish organizations that coordinate all of these things. And they've co-opted our country. We're no longer a democratic republic. We are a Jewish oligarchy. We are becoming the Soviet Union as it was in the early days of the Bolshevik Revolution. And I want to remind people that over the 75, 78 years that the Soviet Union existed, they killed 100 million Russian Christian men, women, and children. And I fear that if they are successful, the same thing is coming here. That's why these data centers are being built to track everything each and one of us does, says, whatever. Your cell phones spy on you. It's a 24-hour constant monitoring thing. Your computer does. Your smart TV does. Your smart refrigerator probably does too, as far as I know. But we need to disengage. We cannot allow this surveillance state to exist. It must be crushed now, because our life under it will be worse than what happened in the Soviet Union. But I want to remind people that read Solzhenitsyn. Read his book, Gulag Archipelago. It's a thick book, but read one chapter if you read anything at all, and that's called The Arrest. And it's about how all the people who were captured in the Gulag, they all went along with it. Well, we'll go to the police and we'll resolve this. And they're never seen again. They're just disappeared. And the people in the gulags were all complaining that if only they had fought, if only they had resisted and not went along with it. And so if they come to pick you up, you have a duty to yourself, to your family, to fight, because we outnumber them greatly. And so fight them. I mean, if you got to stop them on their instep to break their toes, stop them. You take that guy out off the street for 6 weeks while he can't walk. So he's not going to be arresting anybody else for the next 6 weeks. You hurt him, you shoot him. I mean, all these cops, everybody wears body armor now. Okay, so don't shoot him center mass. Shoot him between the belly button and the pubic bone. There's no body armor there. It's going to fuck the guy up. He will bleed out, most likely. And if he doesn't bleed out and he lives, his bladder and his prostate is gone. He's going to be shitting in a colostomy bag the rest of his life. You do that to a couple hundred of these guys, and they're not going to be so eager to pick American citizens up off the street and put them in a gulag. So just it's unfortunate that we have to have this type of discussion. But like I said, our government is toxic on us. And we can't allow our hijacked government that is controlled by Jewish oligarchs to abuse the American people this way. We have to push back. And it's like the bully following you around school. Nobody wants this fight. I don't want to fight like this. I want to resolve things easily and get this country back on track. But if they're going to start taking away my freedom and the freedoms of other Americans, then we have no choice but to resist. And so do I want this to happen? No, it's not. This is the last thing I want. But I'm not going to let the bad guys win. I'm not going to let them turn the United States into another Soviet-style government. I'm not going to allow it. Let me rephrase, over my dead body. Let's just say that. And you lose your fear of death, and suddenly you're genuinely dangerous. And so, at my age, I'm in my mid 70s now, and so a life sentence to me doesn't mean as much as it did when I was 25. It just doesn't. I've had a good run up to this point. And you know, I'm not going to allow it to happen. I'm going to resist. Any signs of a takeover. The trouble that I have, we all have, is how do you push back against this thing? It's like this huge amorphous thing, and there's no specific point on which to hit it or to do anything. And so how do you stop it? How do you stop something that is woven itself into every aspect of society? And it's something that's contrary to you. It's malignant to you, and it has its own agenda. It wants you to knuckle under and submit. And I'm not going to do that. I'm still a free, sovereign human being, and I'm not going to bow to them. So, just how it is.
Yeah, I wanted to touch on Solzhenitsyn. He's got another great book called "One Day in the Life of Ivan Denisovich" that I read back in college, and the whole book, if I recall correctly, you think it is over the span of years, but it encompasses just one day, I believe. So the whole book is just one day in the Gulag system. So that's why it's called "One Day in the Life of Ivan Denisovich." And I've read other books too. I don't have them with me here that touch on that. And then, fun fact: the lithograph behind me was owned by a relative, not blood, who fought for the Tsar during, I think it was the Russian Civil War. So that's kind of a fun fact. The and so anyhow, but yeah, that is a fascinating history and a brutal history there. Wow, Mike, is there anything else you'd like to share, and how can people learn more about you? We can go over more topics too. We don't need to wrap up. We can touch on more too.
Well, I've got a lot, so I keep
Let's do
coming
it.
back to the central theme, and that is, the government we have now is not our government because it has been purchased, and every Republican in the House of Representatives has taken money from the Israel lobby. They all have sold us out, to support a foreign government. I mean, what the fuck? I mean, this should be high treason. But if Kennedy would have been successful, John F. Kennedy, successful in getting AIPAC, or their predecessor, actually classified as a foreign agent, we wouldn't have this problem now. And then Massie just introduced a bill last week to require AIPAC to register as a foreign agent, and they got rid of them. I mean, it just blows me away. I mean, this is a critical problem, and all of these problems that we have are tied together. Ukraine, Iran, illegal immigration, all of these things they're all connected. The illegal immigration, the drug trafficking that goes with it, the human trafficking that goes with that. They're all related. They all have the same source. They all have the same set of NGOs. They all have the same set of supporters, donors, etc. These people, these Jewish oligarchs, are waging war against the American people in our form of government and everything we do every single day. And it is time to call them out and say, enough's enough. But how do we fight them? They have money, we do not. They're willing to bend the laws greatly. If we even attempt to do 2% of what they do, we're going to be looking at prison sentences. So, how do we defend ourselves? How do we defend our culture? How do we defend our way of life? These, the BlackRocks of the world, the Vanguard, those need to be disbanded. They can't be allowed to continue. But you know what? We can see I'll call it, we can see their unhealthy behavior toward the American Republic of what they cause. And there's nothing we can do to stop it. They have too much power. They do what they want. Because our system is so corrupt, it's so driven by money, that everybody gets bought off, and we, the people, have no power yet. So what recourse do we have? There is no constitutional way to do what we need to do peacefully, and that is to recall all of our senators, all of our congressmen, and our president, get all new people in there. We need to do that. That's what must happen. But there's no way to do it available to us. The only other choice you have would be to go kinetic, If you advocate to go kinetic, you're going to have the FBI knocking on your door in 2 days and hauling you off in handcuffs for questioning at a minimum, if you ever come back. So we're really stuck. We really got to find a way to work our way out of this. How do we non-comply? How do we not participate in things when you can't log on to your bank account because of this reason, that reason, or the other reason? You haven't complied with some issue, something. And like I said, if we're going to retain our sovereignty as human beings, we have to stop this. Like I said, all these things are interconnected. They all relate together. They all have the same point of origin, and that is, how to destroy this country and who benefits, who gains, why now. You look at the statement of Benjamin Netanyahu, where he said they were going to slaughter the United States like a fatted calf and bleed it white, or bleed it, and so that's what's happening to us. We watch these people getting rich at our expense, and then they come in and they take control of our government. No, enough. And, like I said, you have to be careful what you say because of these things called the Patriot Act and other statutes out there where you don't want to get yourself labeled as advocating for insurrection or terrorism or any of this kind of stuff. But we don't have any viable means of affecting change. And I'll quote Chairman Mao, who said, order comes out of the barrel of a gun. If you want to change things, you have to. You may have to resort to that. I like to think we don't, but it's looking more and more like we have fewer and fewer choices. So we have to do something. And the question is, what is it going to be? What is going to get bad enough in this country that's going to make people get up and do things? And I don't mean rioting, and I don't mean fighting each other in the streets and doing stupid shit like that. I mean, how do we get rid of this government that is failing to serve us, that is failing to do the job that they were hired to do, that they're ignoring the structure, that the structure itself has been compromised? How do we get out of this? How do we rewrite the system? Do so legally and peacefully. And like I said, I don't think there's a way. The bad guys, the guys who are occupying power now, are going to use every means at their disposal to prevent this. We see this in dictatorships across where they go out and they'll go kill the opposition guy's whole family and him in bed. They do that. I haven't seen that in this country yet, but I'm not saying it's not possible, because it is. It always is. And these are things that we have to address. And once we lose the rule of law, and I believe it is gone, but once that is gone, then it's anybody's bet. But right now, the rule of law, it protects them and it harms us. I mean, protesting doesn't work. We learned that on January 6th. That was a peaceful protest that got labeled as an insurrection, although there were no firearms on the thing. And you can't have an insurrection without firearms. No one, very, very few injuries. No one was trying to, go lynch any politicians or anything. It was a peaceful protest that got labeled as an insurrection. That was brilliant jujitsu by the deep state and the powers that be. That was really, really good.
Yeah, I know a guy that was actually there, present, and he said that he saw people being encouraged to go inside, officers and undercover people. And a buddy of his who was the police chief over in La Habra, I believe, in Southern California, he was sentenced to 25 years in prison. I think now he's been released because of, obviously, the current administration. But a lot of people egging people on.
Well, there is, and like I said, all these things are tied together. You look at illegal immigration, and then you look at the DOGE effort that Elon Musk was advancing. Elon Musk, they found 120 million Social Security accounts out there that were illegitimate, from dead people and fake people and all kinds of stuff, and yet you don't hear a peep about it today. And the reason why is somebody was out there who's benefiting from those illegal payments on Social Security. Somebody's benefiting of it. And somebody sat Trump down and told him, say, look, if you cut this money off, the ripple effect it's going to have, because these other things that depend on that cash flow are going to die. You're going to have people out there. This could cause an economic collapse if you take that big of a bite out of the illegal fraud that's going on. It may collapse the economy. You look at the illegal immigration problem. Imagine, if you will, if we deported 100 million illegal aliens within a year or 2 years. Imagine what that's going to do to real estate values in this country. That are artificially high. Average 3-bedroom, 2-bath home now is worth $500,000. It might take it back down to the $200,000 range if you got rid of 100 million illegal aliens in this country who are occupying housing. The cost of rents are gone up. Places that used to rent for $500-$600 are now renting for $1,400-$1,500. And all of those things would change. They would adjust back to normal. But how is that going to affect Wall Street? How is that going to affect the banks? How is that going to affect mortgages? How is that going to affect the cash flow of the country? Both of those issues, DOGE and the deportations, that Trump both abandoned and didn't follow up on. And so how do these affect the economy? Why is Trump protecting these people who are making their money in illegal manners? Whether it's through fraud or whether it's through this fake demand, or it's not fake, it's a genuine demand, but it's an artificial demand imposed by illegal people or illegal aliens being within our country. So how do you address these things? How do you prepare the economy to take those type of adjustments? How rapidly can the economy flex and bend and adapt to changes like that? You got a young guy, 25, 30 years old. He can't afford a house at $550,000. But he could afford one with what he makes for $200,000. So who do you help? Are you helping the moneyed class at the top? Are you helping all of the American citizens? These are the questions. This is what we're not seeing done. And it's my supposition here that these things are not being prosecuted because Trump feared he had sold to him, or he'd been informed that the economic damage to his economy, that he wouldn't be the greatest president. He wouldn't have the best economy. He wouldn't have this, that, or the other thing that his personality seems to crave. He wants to be the best at this and that, or at least claim he is. And if he deported 100 million people and cut off the DOGE money, his economy might crater. But what's the right thing for the American people? He's not viewing the problem the right way. If the real estate values cratered and the DOGE fraud was put off, and Social Security is going to last another 30 years or so because the fraud's eliminated. It's not throwing money away in an unseemly manner in a way it wasn't intended. That benefits the people. If the younger generation, the 20, 30, 35-year-olds can afford to buy houses, that benefits them. That allows them, that's their greatest way to acquiring wealth or acquiring a net worth that's available is through home ownership. And you do it the slow way, not the artificial fast way that it's been done since the 2008 mortgage meltdown. But Trump is not reading the benefits the right way. He's not reading how do you do the most good for the most people, the most cost effective. He's not following that mantra. He's looking at how do I protect the people who have money, not how do I benefit the bulk of the American people. And that is one of his mistakes. That is a very tragic mistake that he's making. That's an expensive one. So.
Yeah, a lot of people are discontent. A lot of people are discontent. There are some people that I still I don't communicate with them, but we're connected through social media, and I see some of their posts that they make, and wow, I'm just like total inculcation. I mean, there's no awareness of alternative points of view. They're very much in their own left-right divide, and I find it asinine to me when I see some of these people. I want to name their names, but I won't. People in alternative media, and they keep still talking about Democrats and Republicans. Like, I'm like, this is absolutely crazy to me. Like, you are actually doing your 3 million, 4 million followers a disservice by continuing to talk about this stuff, because it's way deeper than that. And I'm just blown away. And obviously, some of these people are, I surmise, supported by intelligence agencies or certain actors to help propagate a certain narrative. But I just find it absolutely crazy, absolutely crazy.
Well, it is. And like I said, these things need to be addressed. We need to at least have conversations about them. And, our news media, of course it fails us because it's controlled by the guys who wear the tiny hats again. But the alternate media is doing a better job, and it's doing a better job educating people. Like you stated earlier, the younger generations are that's where they get their news, and I think that's a good and healthy thing. And yes, folks, I am an old boomer. I admit it. I've seen comments out there refer to me as that. And yes, I am guilty as charged. But I'm trying to share what little bit of wisdom I've gleaned out of this life, and trying to, I'm on your side. I want you guys to do well. I want to leave this world in a better state so you guys benefit from it. And right now we're failing at that, and trying to find a way to get our feet from under us. But we're fighting a really tough adversary here who wants to take it all and doesn't care about you. But I've got a kid, and I've got family and things. I want them to do well in the future. I want all of you to do well in the future. And we just got to get. We don't have the political will to need to do what needs to be done, and we're going to have to get a lot tougher about it. We're going to have to become as brutal as they are, but with them, to humble them, to put them in their place. And and speaking of which, we touched on this earlier about social media and stuff, and this whole mass surveillance trend that has emerged. The Palantir and the digital central bank digital currency. This stuff terrifies me. I mean, it terrifies me to where you won't have any privacy. Everything you do, and you look at it, and they want to control humanity the way a beehive works, or a way an anthill works. Now, everybody's going to have their little place. Everybody's going to have their function. You do that. You go here. You go there. These are your assigned routes. This is what you do. That's not how humans are. This is some other influence upon humanity here that is trying to advocate for the surveillance state. So, to gain control and to gain the ability to control and forecast what we're going to do. This is not how humans are. We're sporadic. We're dirty. We're messy. We're not organized. We're independent. We do things as we see fit, how we see fit. So you have to ask yourself, where is this influence coming from? Where is the influence to control humanity as if we were part of the hive? Where does this come from? This is such an inhuman thing. So who's driving this? Where does it come from? What is the source? What's funding this? Where does this come from? These are questions we have to ask, because we're not going to understand what's happening to us until we understand what the motive is, and so why they want to do this. But to have a surveillance state that restricts our options, our choices, and controls our ability is very much hive-like. And like I said, I don't know where this comes from. So
the people I keep hearing, the alternative take outside of the tiny hats is all roads lead to Rome, literally, and bloodline families. So that's that is the other point of view that you don't hear in alternative media. I've not, and again, I'd love to mention a lot of these things very well at some point. I'm sorry. Yeah, bloodline families.
Well, yeah, but who's giving them the orders? Where are they?
Except not of this world.
Yeah, that's my point.
They're they are the human broker. They get corporal power.
They're the liaison, the interface between
yes
that race and our race and stuff. And so, okay. But, these are things that, don't we have a choice? Do we not have free will? Do we not have discretion over our own fate, our own destiny? Why do we have to have these things forced upon us? If they're so great, spell it out. If it's that good, we'll volunteer. And if it's not good, we're going to run away if it's not a good deal for us. But why are they afraid of that decision if this would be a good deal for us in any way, shape, or form. Why would they be afraid to give us that option if life in the hive mind was a better deal? You know, so what you read between that is they need us, we don't need them. So they're trying not to give us the choice. If we could be replaced with AI and robotics and all this stuff, why do they still need us? Why do we matter? Why do they want to control us? Why do they want to observe us, observe our thinking? Why is our data so important to them? You know, these are questions I have. I don't have answers for yet, but you know, it allows you to infer various things. You know, if you've got if you can play game theory with yourself or with your peer group, then you can usually figure some things out that will at least give you hints as the directions in which you need to look to determine the answer for this. But always ask yourself two things: who benefits, why now, on everything you see. So
Cui bono. Yep. The two things I heard as it relates to why us. Well, I guess technically they don't need us to some extent, but we still serve some utility, and then part of that is the energy / vitality. This I'm hearing from some people that is needed.
are we talking the harvesting of Lush here?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, that may be, and Lush is generated by what, fear and despair.
Yeah, you can. I heard you can torture an animal, but it doesn't render the same degree of loosh. I'm not an expert on this stuff, but a human emits far greater. And I was told by a person that the movie Ghost, okay, believe it or not, I haven't watched it soup to nuts. I've seen clips of it, clips of the movie over the years, but I guess there is according to some that's pretty accurate as far as like the other dimension, so to speak, the other world.
You mean the movie Ghost with Demi Moore and all
Patch,
that?
yeah.
Okay.
Hey, I'm just sharing with you what I'm hearing from people. Yeah.
It's a nice concept. To think that may be a little bit of what the afterlife is worth or like. I don't know yet, or maybe if I have known, I forgot when I reincarnated into this.
Well, you must have been some commander or political figure throughout history. I've always wondered, like, okay, if there's a reincarnation thing, who is I? Because I have certain proclivities and interests in certain things that are not normal. I'll just frame it that way.
Well, I think we all do. And let me take a 60-second break here.
91 degrees over here where I'm at right now. Not crazy yet.
Hang on. 64 outside right now.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, it's cool. It's cloudy, but
yeah.
Okay. All right, let's hit it, Maestro.
All right, we are good to go.
Okay, well, what else you want to talk about today? Had to take a short bio
Sure.
break.
Well, I think we finished off with Lush and what else? Just kind of power structure, what we're seeing out there. And I'm just trying to think of anything coming down the pipeline here, socially, politically.
Let's sort of re-encapsulate it, because what we see across the board in every system, at least in the U.S., we see the breakdown of virtually every system. Our judicial is broken down. Law enforcement can't or won't do their job. Freeways are falling apart. Our education system is in shambles. Immigration's out of control. Nothing government does works right now. Nothing. And so why are we putting up with this failing government? That's really the issue here. You look at how education has changed, and it all comes from lowering of standards. And, I need to remind people that the United States did not willfully decide that racial integration was going to happen. Our democratic process was defeated in that effort. It didn't work. Americans had integration pushed on them literally at the barrel of a gun, starting, I think it's 1957 in Arkansas, and then when George Wallace was governor of Alabama, when they forced the integration of the school systems down there. They put the 82nd Airborne, was it Mississippi? I forget my memories on that. But these are big deals. I mean, we didn't ask for this. And then for 10 years after integration was forced by the Civil Rights Act of 1964, you had riots in Boston because they didn't want to bus their kids across town, didn't want the other kids bused across town into their area. I mean, there was riots over this. People, went and fought in the streets over this issue of integration. It was never welcomed. It was never wanted. And all this effort to bring equality to people. And people are not equal. I mean, you and I, you compare each other, we're not equal, but we should have access to equal opportunities, and that should be provided to everyone. But to say that we're equal, no. You might be smarter than me. I might be stronger than you. You might run faster. I mean, to say that we're equal is a false statement. But you and I and anyone else that exists within this country should have access to equal opportunity. And what the left seems to want is they want equal outcomes. Well, it goes to the old computer saying about software, garbage in, garbage out. You put quality in, you get quality out. It depends on what you start with, who that individual is, what they can make of themselves, if they apply themselves. And, we can't fix those problems. And we've been trying to fix it, and nothing works. And so we need to have new discussions about how do we organize ourselves? How do we conduct ourselves? We talked about diversity earlier. Diversity is death. It's destructive. It's not good for America or the American people. It isn't. I mean, it's not good for the blacks. It's not good for the whites. It's, you put all these foreign elements in this country and try to tell us that this is good. Well, don't feed me bullshit and tell me it's chocolate mousse. I can tell the difference. And people just need to wake up and let's at least talk amongst ourselves, because what we've been doing doesn't work. And so we need to change. We need to modify what we've been doing to find something that is more functional, that produces better results, that's more cost effective. And these are things that we can do, but we have these elements out there that are stopping it, that want to block us, that they want to control things, that they want to treat us as if we're identical and the same, that we're another brick in the wall, to quote the Pink Floyd song. And, people have to be treated as individuals. It goes back to this hive mind thing where, we're not bees in the hive. We're not ants in the anthill. We're all our own people. We're all very similar. We're all extremely different. So we have this among us that we're not like, the honeybees that you got, 100,000 of them, and they're all just identical worker bees. You can't tell one from the other. Well, you can tell us apart by how we act, how we behave, how we think, how we conduct ourselves. We're different. They all act the same. We don't. And to try to impose that hive mind mentality on us, like I said, this is a not human behavior that they're trying to get sovereign individual human beings who don't operate in that manner to behave in a way that's alien and foreign to us. And so I think that this influence is coming from something that is not human and something that we cannot see. But they're trying to make us comply or mold ourselves to that model, that template. And it's not something that humanity can do. We will fail at that. And we've got to make them realize their mistake and get out of it because humans can't live this way. It's just not how we are. So,
you remind me of is as it relates to integration and things of that nature. And again, for those in the audience who don't know, my take is my philosophy is, hey, I don't care what someone's background is or skin or religion or whatever. My take is, and if people want to set up their own communities and do their own thing, I'm like, hey, go for it, dude. Do your thing. My thing is that culturally there has to be a unified part. You're right. Like the people have to assimilate. There has to be a shared culture. So you might be from this part of the world, you might be from that part of the world, but hey, if you're coming here, you've got to adopt the culture, you've got the language, et cetera, et cetera. If you want to do something, you have your own religious thing or whatever, and you're doing your own thing or whatever, that's fine. But, for example, apparently certain parts of the UK, they have their own little Sharia area there. I've heard in some parts. where they just kind of do their own thing. And so that's a no-go, obviously, for me. I mean, to me, that doesn't make any sense. And then I was reading about, I mentioned Simon Hunt earlier, and I was really curious about Rhodesia. I think I'm saying that right. And you don't hear much about it. I feel like most Americans don't in general. You obviously have heard about, most of us have heard about South Africa and the stuff that has gone on over the decades. But over in Rhodesia, I guess in the 60s, I think it was around it was somewhere in the early 60s where the UK prime minister told I'm assuming that the president, I'm assuming it was the prime minister of Rhodesia, whatever the term is, that, hey, you need to allow the people there to vote as it relates to their relationship with you know, the the white population having, I think it was like 5%, and you had the rest of the indigenous people there of, I think it's like Congo or something like that. And the PM there over in Rhodesia, from my understanding, said, hey, we don't want to do that, in going against the UK prime minister. And they did this huge economic blockade on Rhodesia, right? And then you had that war, that conflict over there, and ultimately things just started crumbling completely. So I guess I'm thinking about in terms of like at the barrel of a gun, like how you mentioned about the AIPAC Airborne. I think it was during Eisenhower's presidency, forcing things upon people despite them not wanting to do that. And again, I'm not taking a stance there as racial integration stuff, but what's gone on over in Africa is pretty interesting. When you had Dutch or Anglo or fill in the blank group, Belgian, actually Belgian, that was, I don't know where that was. A lot of interesting things with integration. And then you see it evolve. You saw it rise, and then you saw it quickly devolve.
Belgium was mostly in the Congo, and Rhodesia is east of Congo.
Okay.
And Cameroon and the Central African Republic are west of Congo. Okay, and South Africa is south. So, and also contiguous with what was Rhodesia. Now they call it Zimbabwe. So, and after overthrowing the government of Rhodesia, Zimbabwe went into being one of the poorest countries in the world, and they took a great productive country that was an asset and turned it into a liability. And you had hyperinflation where you'd have to go, to buy 3 trillion Zimbabwe whatever's to buy a loaf of bread. It was really a bad time, and all the jobs, all the economic activity within Rhodesia died when it became Zimbabwe. You're seeing a similar phenomena happening in South Africa. The Dutch Boers have been there for 500 years. When they arrived, there were no Bantu, Xhosa, or Zulu peoples there. They did not exist in South Africa. So what happened is the Dutch Boers developed the country, agriculturally productive. The Bantu, Zulu, Xhosa people were starting to migrate in. They were doing well. They were prospering under the Dutch Boers. You had a contention there between the British over control because of the gold and the diamond mines. The British wanted to seize it for the city of London, and the Rothschild interests, and the Dutch fought them. The Dutch lost. The British were the ones who invented the concept of the concentration camp and imprisoned the Boers. Since that time, the Bantu peoples, the Xhosa, the Zulus, moved in mass into South Africa and have now become the majority, where before they did not have a physical presence at all. And they're claiming that is now their land, when they historically had not occupied it more than, at maximum 100 years ago. So that's a little bit of corrected history. If you want to read a book about it, James Michener wrote a book about South Africa, and it's a very, very excellent and very accurate recounting of the history and of South Africa there and all. It's very, very well done.
Noted. Well, is there anything else you'd like to touch on?
Well, yeah, I got a couple things to go on. And, our education system, it's really been infiltrated. As I said earlier on, that the compromise on standards, and that has been really, and compromising on standards on the, using race as the justification to compromise. Well, you can't compromise standards. You just can't. on education in particular. And we failed at this. We allowed our education system to be undermined, to be subsumed. I blame this directly on the Frankfurt School out of Frankfurt, Germany, moved here in 1933 into Columbia University, and they have really destroyed the U.S. education system across the board, coast to coast, from kindergarten through postgraduate. They have destroyed it. And, we look at the influence now within our primary schools, K through 12, where you have such a heavy homosexual trans orientation in the schools and the teachers, and they're using these as indoctrination centers to corrupt our children, and this needs to be addressed. I would rather have us see the whole public education system just ended and go back to locally controlled systems where you have a local school board that determines what the curriculum is going to be and who is going to be hired, and get this NEA and national education system out of there. And again, you look at who heads the NEA, it's another Jew. All of these things, Ukraine, Iran, illegal immigration, education, all of them has the source of corruption comes from is the Jewish influence on them. They corrupt everything for their own means, everything they touch. And so we need to claw this back. We need to take control back over what our children will be taught and how they're going to be taught it. And if you want to live in San Francisco and you want to send your kid to the gay school, then by golly, that's up to you. But if you want to live in Kansas or Iowa or Nebraska or someplace, anywhere in the Bible Belt down south, and you want to send your kids to a Christian school or a Christian-oriented school, then that's your privilege as well. But we just can't allow this a distributed national effect on our education. We have to take ownership of it back and not outsource it to third parties. And the same thing with law enforcement. We've outsourced law enforcement. We've outsourced our responsibility as citizens to stop crime in our neighborhoods. We've allowed police forces to usurp that from us. Whereas if you had a child predator living in the neighborhood and the kids were getting hurt, the neighbors would take care of it. If you had a drug dealer in the neighborhood and kids are getting high, the neighbors would take care of it. But now we've outsourced this all to law enforcement, and we need to resume that. You look at San Francisco, look up what they call the Committee of Vigilance, and that's a model. And everybody complains about the vigilantes. Well, the vigilantes get the fucking job done, where our law enforcement has allowed itself to be hamstrung to where they can't do the job they're paid to do. And if they do the job, we've got a judiciary who's recycling them, within days. People who have 25, 30, 40, prior arrest, they're in overnight and they're back out again. Why? These people are a danger to themselves and others. Why do we allow this? The whole thing is it's lack of enforcement. It's lowering the standards on everything, including crime and punishment. So, okay, we don't want to spend the money to put some teenager in jail for 90 days for tagging, okay? So let's don't do that. But if we catch him, let's at least administer a punishment to him that's appropriate and cost effective. Do like Singapore does, and cane him publicly if you catch him tagging. It's not going to hurt him. It's going to cause a little discomfort, but he's not going to be injured long term. Only his pride and embarrassment for it, and shame and humiliation is a great tool to shaping behavior. And to the cost effectiveness of putting somebody in jail for 90 days, at a cost of $800 a day, as compared to caning him one time, giving him 5 strokes in the public square. What's more cost effective? What's going to deter his behavior? All right, and for 90 days, out for 90 days. He could care less. He's not suffering from it. But you get him bare-assed in public and you hit him with that cane like they do in Singapore. Hit him with that 5 times. He may think twice about it. All I know is what we're doing now doesn't work. We need to do other things. There's other forms of humiliation. If it's grand theft auto, okay, put them in the stocks in the public park. Let them stay down there for a week and a half, and or in the stocks, so they can drink their nourishment through a straw and get adequate water. But they don't get bathroom breaks. They don't get to lay down. They don't get to sit down. They're in the stocks there for 6 or 7 days. Don't do it again. If you don't want to go back in the stocks, don't steal the car. But it's a more cost-effective approach. And as our governments have financial constraints, we're going to see less and less of the punishment aspect. We're going to see less and less. The judges don't have the financial bandwidth to imprison everybody who needs to go to jail. So let's find a cost-effective alternative that's going to make things more effective for them. There's no long-term damage in these things. They worked for centuries. They effectively worked for centuries. And so why don't we adapt them? This experiment with these humane treatments of prisoners and criminals hasn't worked. Figure it out, folks. I mean, these guys are getting arrested 35, 40 times and they go and stab some pretty young Ukrainian girl in the neck. I mean, come on. These people, we're not dealing with them effectively. We're endangering our populations by mollycoddling criminals instead of giving them a more cost-effective and deterrent of a punishment by a caning or a time in the stocks or something. I'm not saying. It just the crime has got to match the punishment, and right now there's absolutely no punishment in many of these cases. These cases get dropped, they don't get enforced, they get probations, they get this, that, there are 1,000,005 things that the criminals are not taken into account. And this needs to happen at every level, from the regular street criminal who's going to be vandalizing, stealing cars, assaulting people, all the way up to the big white collar criminals who are stealing hundreds of billions of dollars from our stupid U.S. government who allows it to happen. Like I said, the enforcement element isn't effective. The punishment element isn't effective. If it was, we wouldn't be seeing this wave of criminality that's permeated our entire society. We wouldn't have to do it. Our women would be safe walking the streets, of the neighborhood. Just doing things instead of having to worry, having to be afraid, having to be on guard all the time. We don't have to live this way. We don't have to live in fear. We just have to take matters back into our own hands. But outsourcing law enforcement and outsourcing the judicial, if we don't like what a politician does, let's tar and feather them like they used to do. Like this Festus, Missouri, they voted out the entire town council for allowing a data center to go in without announcing a public hearing for it. So, all right, vote them out of office and tar and feather them. There has to be a consequence for bad behavior that harms other people. And right now, our judicial and law enforcement, our penal system they're not functional. They're not working. It's crimes getting worse. Things where we're seeing more and more repeat criminals just recycle time and time and time again. And we sit back and put up with it. We don't have to live this way. We can change this and do so in a cost-effective manner that's going to have a better outcome for society at large.
Yeah, you're making me think throughout history how, and I'll just say that, I feel like most of us alive today, whether you're, whether you are a baby boomer or a Gen Z tuning in, and for those who are curious in the audience, and I'll share with you, most of the audience is about 60 years of age on both Spotify and YouTube. So just to give you some color there, Mike. But as far as, I look at it as we see the world only from the world that we have been reared in, the world that we have read about or heard. And I would say that this world that we have inherited and that we live in is not the norm for most of humanity in the way things are done and in the manner in which things are effectuated. That and I guess tying it in with what you're referencing as far as having a system in place whereby people are held accountable and that there is a discipline that is enforced. Obviously, for most of humanity, if you deviated, there was a corporal punishment. Things were done in a public manner. For the vast majority in the world that we live in, this post 20, well, we're in the 21st century, but I mean, the past, the collective memory right now only really goes back maybe 90 years. I mean, your average Joe, the collective memory, who they can talk to, interact with, who remembered something from 1940 or 1930. I mean, that's about as far as it's going back presently. So it is, you're having me think about how in the past when they had issues, I mean, they would you do piracy, you're going to get gibbeted, or
That's kind of how it is. I mean,
yeah,
if you do this, that's going to happen. I mean,
you're you're you're
that's and
you're
we've taken that certainty out of criminality. So the criminals, well, no, I can shoplift, nothing's going to happen. I mean, so what? They catch me, so what? Nothing's going to happen. I'll get probation. Well, because we don't want to imprison them. There's an expense to putting someone even in county jail. It's not cheap. And so you don't want to put them in jail, administer the punishment, turn them loose. You come back again, you're going to get 10 strokes of the cane next time. You're going to do 2 weeks in the stocks next time.
yeah.
It's up to you, dude. I mean, you don't want to go up there till you're in the stocks for a month. I mean, you don't want to be the guy who gets 50 strokes of the cane. You don't want to be that guy. So stop
Or
what
be
you're
sent,
doing.
or be sent. I think what was really interesting was what I read about. This was during the 17th century. They, I knew at least in France with prisoners, they would send them to the galleys where they were chained on those vessels in the Mediterranean, and you're in the galley right beneath the deck, and if that goes down, you go
You go
down
down
with
with
it.
it. You're chained to it.
You're
Yeah. Well,
that's creepy.
that's the whole Roman galley approach there, where you are chained to your position in the ship, and you better row,
Yeah.
and you better hope that your guys don't get rammed.
The other thing I read that was interesting was in I think Louis the 15th era, so mid early 1700s. They all there was a proposal to get the prisoners and have them marry prostitutes and have them settle in Louisiana. I know they did that too. That was another thing. Hey, let's get these people out here because it's expensive. And then you're making me think during the Dickensian era, during Oliver Twist's time, where they had people walking on the treads that would render grain or whatever. So they had different ways to utilize people today. I don't know though. I'm not intimately familiar with the whole prison system today, but I surmise people don't really work and they probably eat a lot better. It's funny as I was in my garage the other day, I was looking through stuff and actually what's funny is I wanted something sweet to eat here at the house. I don't really have any sweets here. And I was like, you know what? That MRE that I have might actually have a sweet because usually in the MREs they have like candy or something. So I went in my garage, I pulled out an MRE and I was like looking at the back like, my gosh, I can't believe they feed people this shit. It is so bereft of any nutritional value, and that some contractor has provided.
It's high caloric input.
Yeah, it's just
You
crap.
eat one, you get like 3,500 calories. It's shit food.
Yeah,
It's sugar and fat. Essentially is and
yeah,
our military deserves so much better than they get, but this is a whole nother issue with the military procurement system, which is one of the worst in the world. And that's what happens when you go with the low cost contractor. You get the cheapest, crappiest stuff that has to perform to a standard, and they will try to hedge that standard any way they possibly can. The other approach is, how do you get the best value? If this MRE costs $1 and this one costs $1.10, but it's nutritional and it's good and it's better, where's the real value at? And that's these are all things that have to be quantized and measured. And our military procurement system does none of this. None of it. They just look at low cost provider.
yeah. When
Or a no bid contract. That's the other option.
yeah, well, I could say from firsthand experience, when I was in the Navy, I was over in Coronado on the what they call the dry side of the Naval Amphibious Base, Lemoore, California, which is another spot, and Camp Pendleton. And unless the barracks have changed, when I was there, it was pretty decrepit. It was pretty decrepit. I mean, it looks like a cell, like pretty much. Yeah, I'm not joking. And the toilets are just it was pretty bad. It was pretty bad. And I just thought to myself, wow, like this is just remarkable. This is crazy. Just
You just circled back to one of my opening lines, and that is, it's what happened to the standards. Where does the money go? Why are our freeways decrepit? Why are our military bases decrepit? We're spending $1 trillion a year. There should be budget in there to maintain these things, to refresh, to update, to modernize these things on an ongoing basis. Where does the money go? Why does an American weapons platform cost 10 times what a Russian one does? I mean, literally 10 times. Before the war, the Russian special military action in Ukraine began, Russia's annual military budget was, guess how much? Yes.
gosh, okay. Their annual military budget. Okay, I'm obviously in the billions, so I don't know, like 100 billion, or I'm just arbitrary number here.
65 billion.
65 billion. Okay.
65 billion. And they have more platforms and better platforms than we do. The fighter aircraft they produce perform better. Their hypersonic missiles, we don't even have hypersonic missiles, perform better. Their stuff works better for a tenth the cost. It's just amazing to me how bloated our procurement system is for the military. How many people get rich off of it, and yet we're still buying the low cost bidder. Why is that? Why do we get so little when the Russians get so much? The other flaw in our procurement is our fighting philosophy, our combat philosophy. And the U.S. looks at you look at the F-35. You look at this is the all-weather night fighter. It does this. It does that. It's never matched a spec. They're on the ground, a fraction of the time, less than a third of the time, around 30-35% is the only time that their flight. There's something called the tooth to tail ratio. Are you familiar with the term? Okay, how much combat expense do you have compared to how much maintenance and support staff do you have? The tooth to tail ratio on the F-35, it's got a very modest tooth and a very large tail. So it takes a lot to support that thing. It takes a lot of ground crew. The average F-4 back in the Vietnam era had a ground crew of 4. The F-35 has a ground crew of over 35 people. So it's quite a lot more support, a lot more tail. It requires more updates. What they do to you on your computer, what Microsoft does to you, and other, they need to update the software all the time. And of course, they charge you for every software update for the F-35. So these things, they've chased the technology to where they have this wonderful technology that doesn't work a lot of the time, but it's wonderful and it's expensive. And so they're always searching for technological superiority and technological brilliance, but they're sacrificing reliability and they're sacrificing cost. So are you better off putting 10 Russian airplanes in the air to fight an F-35, or you better off putting, that's what the Russians do. They're since their costs are 1/10 of ours, they can put 10 aircraft in the air for the same cost as one F-35. Who do you think wins that battle? How does the attrition work out on that one? And you look at the same thing with tanks. The Abrams tank versus the T-70, T-73s. These are smaller, low cost, very nimble, very fast. They can cover a lot of ground. Infantry can't stand up against them at all. They're very good. Tank battles, they're going to not do as well. They're going to be able to fire more rounds, but they won't be able to absorb as many rounds. So there's trade-offs there. So it's a whole different philosophy. Is how do you wage war? Do you have if you lose one F-35, and they lose one of their MiG-20, MiG-30, MiG-35, whatever it is, if they lose one of theirs, who lost more? We lost more money, we both lost an aircraft, but ours was more expensive.
This is like German Panzer or German tanks versus the Sherman, which was simpler and quicker to make, as opposed to the better German tanks during World War II. You're reminding me of.
Yeah, it's the same type of comparison, and you look at what we're doing with you know um, uh, air defense. And so, all right, you've got drones you can make for $50,000, but we're firing a $2 million missile at them to stop them. Okay, does that make sense financially? The $50,000 drone or the $2 million missile. Right? We shoot 100 missiles at it. We got them all down. Yeah, you spent 200 million bucks. They spent a million. And so, how do you win this type of war? Warfare has changed forever. The drone warfare, the drone element in this, you do not want to be infantry. You just do not. That is a death sentence. And these drones are extremely effective at hitting tanks. They're extremely effective at hitting ships. They can overwhelm missile defense systems. Warfare has changed. And I don't feel that our Pentagon and our procurement strategies and philosophies have changed in tandem with the reality. We're lagging, and we have to pick up our game. God forbid if Trump takes ground troops into Iran, they're not going to come back. I mean, I don't want to be negative about it. I wish them well. I don't want to see us engage in a ground war in Iran, but I want all of our service members to come back. I don't want to sacrifice them. They're too valuable, and maybe not to the military, but they're valuable to their mom and dad, their brother, their wife, whatever. They're valuable to people, and so we need to bring them home. We need to protect them. But if we're going to get into wars, we need to get into wars that are going to benefit this country somehow or protect this country somehow. Not get into these stupid wars fighting for another country that has bought our politicians off. We just can't afford to do that. Those days are done. And I think I sent you this. I got a request for fundraising from the Republican Party. Last night I got it, and I kind of responded to him and said, "No, I will not support the Republican Party since you lost Thomas Massie. Every other Republican in Congress, takes a bribe from Israel. I will not support a party that is influenced by a foreign government." And so I renounced the Republican Party. I quit. So that was my response to them, because I'm not going to support Israel in any way, shape, or form ever. And I'm not going to support a party that does. And so I am without party right now. I can't vote for the Democrats because they're a bunch of progressive leftist communists. And I can't vote for the Republicans because they're a bunch of Israeli sycophants who are selling our country out and using us as a mercenary army to fight Israel's wars. I won't support either. And so I withdraw from that left-right Democrat-Republican dialogue, and now I want to put what is in the best interest for the United States, what is in the best interest for my people, and the country that I live in, and that's the only thing that matters to me.
Well, I see it as, I mean, we can talk about it, and which is a good exercise, and it serves some purpose, but ultimately there won't be any change until people really feel it, as you have alluded to in other episodes, and that's when people will have to have a rise in consciousness, and not to sound woohoo, and it's got to be a bottom up sort of a change.
Sort of a
So
groundswell, if you will. Yes.
yeah.
Well, they say that if this Iran situation is not resolved by the July 4th weekend, that our fuel tanks will be at bottom, and that they won't be able to provide adequate fuel for the country to run. The Asian countries, Korea, Japan, Philippines, Malaysia, etc., they're already there. They don't have enough to get by right now. Europe is supposed to be there by the end of May, so we got another 10, 12 days on that. And the U.S. is forecast to be at that situation by the July 4th weekend. So, which I really don't want to see. I
Mhm.
would like this thing to be resolved. I hear these wild conspiracy theories that the Iranians are an asset of British MI5 and 6, and that they're hiding all these records and all this stuff. Like I said, money laundering for them. I don't know. I can't comment on that.
Well, I think at the very high level, And let me preface, I'm not of the opinion that everybody who is in every cabinet or administration or at the top of the military per se in every country is eating babies and part of this clicker cabal, but they are certainly controlled or influenced by those people, whether they are aware of it or not. And I think that ultimately it is theater, that things are orchestrated, elections are done in advance, and this is a game that is played out on us. And to quote Jason Christoff, people believe people believe the wrestlers are real. That's the scary thing. They think they're real. I don't believe that anymore.
That is a scary thing when you watch WWE and this other stuff, going back into the 70s, back when Hulk Hogan was wrestling, and 80s, all that. It's not real. I don't know how much is theater, but our country is broken. It's not functioning the way it was designed to function. My fear is that the Bolsheviks are the sons and daughters, grandsons, granddaughters of the Bolsheviks who murdered 100 million Russian Christian men, women, and children, are going to be making a play in this country and trying to control us. These laws that come out saying you can't have anti-Semitic speech, it's a 20-year prison sentence. Well, fuck you. I don't get my right to free speech from you or this government. I got this from God. I'm going to say what I want. And so I see your country as Israel committing genocide. And I see a second genocide of the Slavic people in Ukraine happening right now. I see Zelensky just sacrificing, millions of Ukrainian men, in literally millions, at least 2 million. I don't know how much more lately, because they really put a lid on that. And I want to give a shout out here to Gonzalo Lira, who was murdered by the Ukrainian government. He was an American citizen. He was an immigrant from South America, but he married a Ukrainian woman, and he was one of the guys in the beginning of the Russian incursion, telling what was really happening on the ground and why. The real aggressor in the Ukraine war and what got it started was Ukraine itself bombing their eastern, actually artillery shelling, their eastern provinces in the Donbass. And Gonzalo was there in Kharkov, and he was giving, daily, sometimes multiple times a day, accounts of what was really going on and what the truth was, not the propaganda we get. He was on the ground and active for about a year, 14 months. And he was trying to escape the country because they had arrested him and tortured him once, let him out, and they were coming back for him again. He was trying to escape on a motorcycle, and he was picked up at the border and never seen or heard from again. So this is a shout out to Gonzalo Lira. We're all going to have to be Gonzalo Liras within this country, because the people who are behind the situation in Ukraine on the Ukrainian side are very tied into the people who are trying to bring this country down and just stole Thomas Massie's seat from him. These are the same sources, the same funding groups, the same everything with them. All roads lead back to Israel and Judea International. This is all tied together. These are the same perpetrators time and time again. And this is what's going on. It's time to identify who the enemy of mankind is. And it's not white people, it's not black people, it's these Jewish people who are the ones who are the common thread in all of these conflicts, all of this murder, all of this terrorism. And they were the original terrorists. They were the ones who put off the first bombs in the King David Hotel for the purpose of getting the British out of Palestine so they could take over. That's what it was. That was the Ergon group. And the leadership of Ergon went on to become the premiers of Israel after its creation in 1947. These are rotten, bad people. They're just, their business model is kill people, steal their property, and that's what they've done in Palestine. That's what they're doing in Ukraine. That's what they're going to be doing here in this country. And I fear this greatly, that this is their next move, is to do to the United States what they did to the Russian Tsarist Russia. And that's what I fear is coming to our shores. So,
very sobering. Very sobering.
It is. So, I think my final comment I have is I've got a very dear friend who's been working with this AI issue for a long time, very, very senior intelligence type. And his comment on the AI says every AI is controlled by the Jews, and they are controlled by what he called morphological agents within there. And when they're written with what he calls certain software rituals, they can simulate a Stargate, and they can drag access to a demonic or foreign interdimensional entity into here for it to communicate with this dimension. So that's from my buddy here, who's a good guy, very serious guy. He has learned sequences of quantum entanglement using something he calls echo recursion theory. And I am not an expert on this. I am acquainted with it, but not nearly an expert. I cannot explain it, but he is convinced that he is communicating with entities from another universe, if you will. So that's
So so if I understand you correctly, his position is that by using AI, you're inviting something malevolent.
well, he says it's the possibility that's what he says these are being used for, is to allow communication back and forth with entities from another dimension, another universe, if you will. That's what he's saying. So
Got it.
that's his experience. I'm taking it somewhat realistically. This is a very credible guy, in my opinion.
Got it. Wow. Yeah. I would not be surprised. I think, as I say ad nauseum, I think much of what people have come to understand about how the world operates, how they got here, medicine, the whole financial system is by and large a product of obfuscation, and people are in a malaise.
It is, and I mean, we have to realize that most of what we think we know is a lie. Whether it's history, whether it's mathematics, whether it's physics, whatever, that we've not been told the whole truth. There's why our mathematics is so imperfect. We have to invent things called imaginary numbers to sometimes make the math work. And so, is that really correct? Is that really a right mathematical model? Physics, we've had so much suppressed. We should have had anti-gravity and free energy 150 years ago. The equations of Maxwell were changed and hidden from us. They were censored, edited. The work of Victor Schauberger, there's been some really great minds out there that have produced a great deal of relevant technologies that have been suppressed and hidden and withheld from us. We have these cell phones that, I remember when the first cell phones came out. I remember when the first transistor radios came out. How much we've grown in our computational ability and the ability to do these functions, but yet our primary functions of energy generation, we're still burning fossil fuels, and they're not even fossil fuels. We're still burning petroleum products, and we rely on the internal combustion engine for so much that why are we still stuck here? These green energy projects, the solar farms, the wind farms, they're a fraud. They don't work. They're never going to work. That's a dead end that was meant to thwart us and make us think we're doing good things and defer us away from the real alternate energy sources of, not the fission model from a nuclear bomb or a power plant, but the fission model where you're joining molecules together. That works. We know it does. 0-point energy concepts. Do the research on Lieutenant Colonel Tom Bearden. That'll be a good introduction to you as to what's possible there. But these things have been withheld from us. Anti-gravity. I mean, I can think of two opportunities in my life where I've seen anti-gravity at work, and one was a lunar module, and that was the lunar module shouldn't have worked with the amount of energy that the engine could produce, but yet it seemed to have gotten them up off the moon. If indeed we did go there. But if it used that energy, they had to have an anti-gravity module in there somewhere. There's no way to do it. The other one is in the was it the B1 or the B? I think it's a B2 bomber. You look at the thrust of the engines. You look at the wing surface. There's no way it should be able to carry that payload for as long and as far as it does, based on the engine and the wing surface there. So they're utilizing anti-gravity modules in there. So that's these are just interesting concepts you need to think about. But those are two that have been witnessed. Let's just say that.
Yeah, the documentary Thrive gave me by Foster Gamble gave me kind of some exposure to that free energy stuff that exists. So
Yeah, well,
yeah,
Tesla had it right, and since they couldn't put a meter on it, they killed his research and went over to Edison, who could do it and run it through power lines that can be monitored and know how to charge you. But J.P. Morgan was not willing to fund Tesla any longer since he couldn't make a buck off of it. So there you have it. And these are all things that have, we should have had these things 100, 150 years ago. And if we would have this solar system would be well on the way of being developed. We would probably have an independent nation state on the planet of Mars or on one of the Jovian moons, or who knows, or even beyond. It depends on if we actually developed faster than light travel or some other means of opening portals or circumventing the distances that take so long according to the speed of light, which, if you buy the quantum entanglement model, it should be instantaneous, get from one point in the universe to another point in another universe, if that's the case. So,
well, Mike, it's been great chatting with you here.
well, thank you, sir, for having me on. And I got to tell you, I really tried to mitigate my message today because I did some reading, because I was really pissed about the Massie situation. And I had to rein myself in. I don't want to be the guy that the FBI is knocking on my door because I called for the assassination of X, Y, and Z people. But boy, I was mad about this. It just really, really inflamed me. And we have to harness our anger and make it productive. And what was the thing I put up today? It says we have to be able to maintain the capacity to experience joy in the face of adversity. And that's really what we need to do. And we can't give in to despair and fear. We can't provide them the loose they need to feed off of us. So we have to maintain the capacity for joy, no matter how bad it gets, no matter how tough it gets. We will get through this. We have no problems we can't solve. And we just have to realize that, and realize all we need is the right motivation, the right inspiration to get us to overcome the political opposition that we come with trying to change things and make them better. You have to realize that there's people out there who make money off of your misery. They make money. People, we wouldn't have the illegal alien problem if people weren't making money doing it. We wouldn't have a drug problem if people weren't making money doing it. And, it's time for us to say, no, we're not going to tolerate this anymore. We're going to stop you from making money selling drugs to our population, to our children. We're going to stop you from bringing illegal aliens in here to displace our native population here from the jobs and the housing that they are entitled to. We have to do this. We have to do it ourselves. We can't take no for an answer. And these people who are making the money off of it, these aren't your friends. They've betrayed you. They betrayed our country. They betrayed your fellow Americans. We need to treat them for what they are. And that is they are traitors. And, this whole illegal immigration thing, it makes me sick. And, if these people don't want to come here and contribute, why do they lack the ability to improve their own country? Why can't they fix what they've got? Why do they have to come here and take from us? That's what I don't understand. And so deport them all and make them go back and fix their own countries. If you want a better life, make your own country better. That's what my people did here. They made things better. And this is probably the first generation in many generations where we're not going to leave our children better off than our parents left us. Shame on us for that. And we owe it to our kids, our grandkids, our great grandkids, the Gen X, the Gen Z, and the Gen whatever, 2 generations down from them, their grandkids. We owe them a chance to have a better life, to have a quality life. to where they get a good education, that they feel safe, they feel secure, that they can work, they have a productive job. The government is not intruding in their lives, where they can develop and be all they can be, to quote the old Army saying. But we owe them that opportunity, and I hope that we can deliver on it. I really hope we can.
Well, on that note, we'll wrap this up. Mike, thanks for your time.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.